Everybody hear me? Good. Welcome, I'm Rob Gotti, Chair of the Westwood Select Board. Good to see you up there. We are here tonight to begin a conversation anew with respect to where we go with Fire Station 1. One of the things that we heard as part of the process leading up to the last decision was that the working group was not an open enough committee. So we decided, okay, we'll open it up to everyone. And so tonight, Danielle Sutton, our Director of Human Services, is going to facilitate a conversation. We're going to have a number of folks present a variety of options that exist. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at what was out on the town website in the run-up to tonight. And then we're going to open it up for discussion and answer questions as best as we are able. So with that, I want to thank you all for turning out. This is a really, really important conversation for how we move forward, because nothing is not an option. Doing nothing is absolutely not an option. So we want to make sure that we have everyone have as much full information as you can to understand the options before us, to ask any questions that you may have related to those options, and have a healthy discussion. So I hope there are folks who are ready to engage. I know the panel is ready to engage, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle Sutton. We may be visited later in the program by Congressman Lynch, who happens to be in the area and wanted to stop by to just touch on the importance of this project and maybe touch on a few other things that are on his mind. So with that, I will just do one order of business. Can I get a motion to open the Select Board meeting? Okay. Yes, this is technically it's a Select Board meeting when any of the three of us are, when all of the three of us are together, or any two of the three of us are together. So with that, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of opening the Select Board meeting? Aye. That's unanimous. Okay, Danielle, take us away.
All right. Hi, everybody. As Rob said, my name is Danielle Sutton. I'm the Director of Human Services for the town of Westwood. And in this role, I oversee the departments like the Council on Aging, Library, Recreation, Youth and Family Services, and Veteran Services. And I've served in Westwood for over 21 years now. First as a clinician in the Youth and Family Services Department, later and for many years as their director, before transferring into my current role. And over those years, I've been able to take part in a number of community projects, both with the town and with the schools. And something that I've witnessed again and again is the impressive ability that the residents of the town have to stay engaged and problem solve around a project until it is done right. So I'm privileged to be here with all of you tonight and to help frame the discussion around this important issue. Thank you for making the time to participate in this forum and to share your ideas, thoughts, and questions. Before we move into our agenda, I would like to now invite the panelists that are up here tonight to introduce themselves.
Molly Fitzpatrick, Interim Town Administrator.
Mike Perkins, Building Commissioner.
I'm Nora Locknane, the Director of Community and Economic Development.
I'm Steve Lund, the Fire Chief.
Hello, I'm Colin Okati. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie McManus. I'm the town's Finance Director and Treasurer Collector.
Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to frame our agenda, and then we'll move into it. Before we move into our agenda, actually, I'd like to just acknowledge where we're at, where we're starting from. So we are here after what many have experienced as a frustrating, disappointing, and concerning process. Regardless of where you stood on the previous FS1 project, it is likely that we share similar feelings. If you supported the project, you're disappointed that the project was voted down and concerned about how we will address the safety of our firefighters and their ability to keep us all as safe as possible. If you did not support the project, you are likely disappointed that the project continued on through 2 votes without the changes you hoped to see. And you are also concerned about how we will address the safety of our firefighters and their ability to keep us all as safe as possible. Something we've heard from the majority of people on either side of the original FS1 project is the common belief that a project is needed and that there's an urgency to this need. And so that's what tonight is about, as Rob said. We're going to start from that common place, reset with active listening, and a commitment to use tonight and the conversations that follow to build a solid foundation on which we can move forward, narrowing in until we find the project that works best all around. Okay, our agenda for the evening. It's divided into 4 parts. The first part is the foundation. We're going to talk about the foundational parameters within which we're working so that we're all starting from the same place. Then we're going to move into reviewing the options. There are 8 possible options currently identified for addressing the needs of the fire department, a number of which were brought forth by residents. Then we'll move into our Q&A period, which is really more of a structured conversation and like a brainstorm where we hope to hear from as many of you as possible about your thoughts and questions on the options we've reviewed, your ideas for possible options that have not yet been identified, and any other clarifying questions that can help move the conversation forward. And finally, we'll move into a discussion of next steps. All right. For the foundation portion, we're now going to hear from Chief Lund and Assistant Chief McCarthy about the operational needs of the fire department and Fire Station 1 that form the necessary foundation of any project we move forward with.
Thank you. So from the very beginning, our operational needs have not changed. We need a safe, healthy building that meets the current standards of the fire service today, the current needs of the fire service today. We need to be able to decon our gear, our equipment, and our people. We also need the room to house a diverse workforce. Currently, we're all crammed in together, and it creates quite a problem.
All right, thank you. Now that we've heard from fire, we'll hear from the other panelists about additional considerations. Do we want to, okay. Is there anything on the next slide about operation that we need to touch on?
So let me take this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, just for a little background information on our operations at Fire Station 1. To start, we operate at a minimum of a 9 shift. That is our minimum. We do not go below 9 shift. 9 people per shift. We operate out of 2 stations. At Station 1 currently, from an emergency response standpoint, out of Station 1, we have a shift commander and a deputy chief, a lieutenant, 2 firefighter paramedics that work on Engine 5, and then 2 paramedics that are assigned to the ambulance out of Station 1. Currently, all of our staffing is cross-trained in 2 different roles. They're here as a firefighter as well as a paramedic. What that allows us is the flexibility to respond to multiple different scenarios based on who's available at the station. If at the time our primary ambulance has already responded to a call, our second ambulance can then be staffed by the 2 firefighter paramedics that are assigned initially to Engine 5. They simply take the second ambulance, and then our deputy chief and our lieutenant are then left to respond with them as well. We currently have 3 firefighters at Station 2, a lieutenant and 2 firefighter paramedics. In the future, it's been determined that we are trying to get to that minimum of 11 personnel total across the town of Westwood, out of 2 different stations. When and if that happens, we're trying to achieve that goal. We would like to move primary ambulance over to Station 2. So at that time, we will have a total of 5 firefighters out of Station 2, and then the remaining 6 will be out of Station 1, which provides us some more flexibility and allows us to respond to as many calls as we can. Currently, as you see here, that's just a layout of what Station 1 currently looks like. As you can see, based on the red rectangles indicate the apparatus that we currently have. Out of Station 1, the top large box indicates what is on Station 1's floor as we speak, and then the bottom box represents what is currently in the basement of Station 2. To the chief's point about the structural instability of the building, What you see on the right side on the bottom box is shoring for the floor. We're looking at options going forward, but as it currently sits, for the last 10-plus years, we've had shoring in that bottom level to help stabilize that floor to allow us to keep the apparatus above it. However, that has been 10-plus years of use. So that's one of the major drivers behind this project. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 4 shifts. We have 4 shifts. So there's, a shift is the staffing at Station 1 and Station 2. Those are the shifts.
Thank you.
All right. I see a hand raised. Is that? Okay, we were going to do, like, go through this portion, then ask questions, but if it's a quick clarification of what they're talking.
In terms of the outcome, so 11 allows us to staff 2 ambulances full-time, whereas 9 only allows us to staff 1 primary ambulance and then 1 backup, which forces us to split up the crew that's assigned to Engine 5. So we down the engine in order to get the second ambulance out. Does that make sense? Correct. Correct. Quite a bit. Yep. Thank you. I think we were going to try to, I don't mind
Yeah.
clarifying, but I
Yeah.
certainly appreciate the question. It's a great question. It's a very confusing process, but I will, during the Q&A section, I will answer a lot more of those if necessary. Thank you.
And thank you for the flexibility, and thank you for the questions. All right, so we'll move through, and then when we talk, after we're done talking about the options, when we move into Q&A, we can address any additional questions or comments at that time. Okay. So now that we've heard fully from Fire, and thank you again, we will hear from other panelists about additional considerations. Stephanie, would you like to start us off? Yes. Other considerations.
All right, so my goal, I have the procurement and debt piece. So my goal is to kind of try to frame those subjects around how it relates to this project. So public projects are subject to standards that private projects just are not. In Massachusetts, public building construction projects must follow strict competitive bidding laws under what we call Mass General Law 149, which requires public advertising projects must follow strict competitive bidding and public advertising and award to what we call the lowest responsible and eligible bidder. These projects must also pay state-mandated prevailing wages, use filed sub-bids for certain trades, such as electrical plumbing, and comply with extensive public safety and accessibility standards, all of which help ensure quality and fairness, but also make public construction more expensive than private projects. So when you see the cost difference between public and private projects, it's largely due to these statutory compliance requirements. On the funding side, the most common way to fund large capital projects is by borrowing funds through the issuance of bonds, which are then repaid over a period of time, typically 5 to 30 years with interest. So bonds funded within the tax limits of what we call Proposition 2.5 are known as non-exempt debt and are included in the town's annual operating budget alongside the school, municipal, and fixed cost budgets. Debt funded outside of Proposition 2.5 is known as a debt exclusion, which is a temporary property tax increase approved by voters at the ballot to pay for a specific project. So once that specific debt is paid off, the associated tax increase ends. So I'm hoping that's sort of framed, and obviously take any questions later to clarify any of this, but hopefully it just sort of walks through the procurement and funding piece as it relates to projects like this.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, we'll come over to this table next.
Yeah, we'll do that. Hi, I'm Mike Perkins, Building Commissioner here in Westwood. I'm going to be talking to some of the code requirements and regulations and standards that have to be met. Those are things that are essentially non-negotiable, things that need to be included in a project such as this. There's a lot of things in the building code that may not be something that and I'm sure some of you have seen it in projects that you have at your house that you necessarily don't think you need or that you want but are required. Currently, we're in the 10th edition of the Mass Building Code that encompasses things like the plumbing code, the structural code, gas, electrical, mechanical systems, HVAC, sprinkler, fire alarm, et cetera. Also includes energy efficiency things, and the Mass AAB regulations, Architectural Access Board, that has to do with accessibility or handicap accessibility. There are also NFPA standards. Those are the National Fire Protection Association standards that have to do with fire station design. Those include things that are required for the fire station to operate appropriately. Those include contamination control, decontamination areas for both, as the chief said, equipment and personnel. Also includes things like storage, maintenance of equipment, also includes things like fitness and training facilities. One of the big things in the building code is that a fire station is considered a risk category 4 building. That essentially means it's a piece of critical infrastructure. It's something that you want to have operational basically at all times. So if there is an environmental disaster or something like that, the fire station is still up and running and being able to respond to emergency calls. That includes things in the building that may not be readily apparent, such as the entire building is on 100% generator backup power. There is also a mandate that the building is designed to between 20 and 50% more stringent structural standards. So if you think about it, that a clothing store might withstand a Category 1 hurricane, your fire station would be designed to withstand a Category 3 hurricane. All of those things add, unfortunately, cost. They also add square footage to a building when you're talking about larger structural members. You're talking about things like separated HVAC systems. You're talking about a lot of different stuff inside the building that aren't necessarily apparent when you see it from the outside. So those are a couple of things that have to be included in the building. Fire station is kind of a different building when you think about it from a design standpoint, in that you figure out what you need to work in the building, then you figure out how you're going to make those things work with the codes and the regulations. Then you figure out how big of a building you need. Typically, on a store, a residential property, an office building, something like that, you take your property that you have and you say, what can I fit on this parcel? The fire stations and police stations are typically reverse of that. You figure out what you need on the inside of the building, and then you figure out how to fit it on whatever parcel you have. So it's kind of backwards, where you design from the inside out on a structure like that. If there's questions later on, I can give you a couple of examples of those things that I was talking about that add square footage and cost, but that's really what we're up against, is operationally what the fire department needs, and then regulatorily what we need to do to meet those codes and standards.
Thank you, Mike.
So my role on the committee is twofold. On the one hand, I look at all the different options that are being considered and advise on the logistics of how those options have to be considered by various boards, the planning board, to review the design and make sure it conforms with the zoning bylaw, the Conservation Commission if there are wetlands or stormwater implications involved. And then my other perspective has to do with economic development. So as many of you know, Westwood employs a split tax rate, where our commercial property owners pay approximately 75% more per $1,000 of value than our residential property owners, which is terrific to get more benefit from commercial properties. However, only 6% of the town is zoned for commercial uses. So we're always looking at creative ways to increase the taxes that come into the town, and finding ways to increase our commercial and our mixed-use development in manners that are cohesive with the community character and the specific requirements of all the neighborhoods in town. So I look at the different options from the perspective of whether it can be, whether it complies with zoning and conservation requirements, but also to what extent it improves our economic development opportunities. And the reason that's important is so that the town can continue to receive the benefits and the services, including all of the benefits associated with our schools and our libraries that we enjoy because of the taxes that come in to pay for all of those things. So we're always looking for new ways of improving the tax situation, and I look at it from that perspective as well.
Thank you, Nora.
And I'll just sort of round this out with the elephant in the room that we are all keenly aware that both the town and the schools have aging infrastructures. We just completed a town-wide facility study that really listed out all of the buildings that are in need of repair. I think it's important as part of this conversation to note that the fire station is not an objection to the school department. We are one community. I want to thank the superintendent for being here. We're working collaboratively to mitigate some of these problems. It's how Westwood came to be that a lot of these buildings were built at the same time. It's something like 60% of all of the town and school buildings are 60-plus years old. They were built at the same time, they're aging at the same rate, and they're going to need to be replaced around the same time. And what we're trying to do here as part of that consideration is take all of that into consideration. The FS1 is a need, the schools are also a need.
Thank you, Molly. All right, so as a summary to what we've heard, these are the priorities that form the foundation of any fire station project before us. I'm going to read through these. So, 1, any project needs to provide optimal response times for firefighters and their equipment to effectively protect the community. A project also needs to provide firefighters with a clean and safe living and working area. It needs to ensure adequate living space that supports a diverse and growing workforce. And it needs to be a prudent financial decision that balances community safety and fiscal responsibility. Okay. Now we're going to move into the second portion of our agenda. So that completes the foundation. And now we're going to move into looking at each of the 8 options that are currently before us. It's important to note that the options you will see do not include the previous FS1 project design that was voted down. That's done. As mentioned, a number of these options were brought forth by residents, and we also remain open to new options that have not yet been considered. None of these options have yet been designed or vetted fully by all stakeholders. This is because we're at the point of, again, looking at all options. This is also why you won't see set dollar amounts under the cost, and rather you'll see an order of magnitude represented by dollar sign symbols. And that's because it's not possible at this point to produce dollar estimates with the necessary degree of accuracy without that design or that vetting by all stakeholders. So for each option, we'll first hear from the fire department regarding their operational considerations of that proposed option. Then we'll hear from the other panelists regarding other considerations for that particular option. We're going to go through all of the options first, and then afterwards is when we're going to have time to converse and brainstorm together in our Q&A section. Okay. So I'll read the title of each of these. Option 1 is the renovation of the existing facility. And as I said, I'll have Fire start us off and then move to the other panelists.
So with the renovation of Station 1, we wouldn't be increasing the space, we'd actually be reducing it. Mike will speak to that later, but we wouldn't be able to add in decontamination areas. We wouldn't be able to add more facilities for the diverse workforce to separate in and sleep in and have privacy. We wouldn't have a true separation between the hot and the cold zone, meaning right now, off the apparatus floor, you walk right into the kitchen. So all the contaminants are just coming right into where we eat and where we live the majority of the time we're at the station. What's that? So we would have to start off by shoring the whole floor, which would mean we would reduce the space we have downstairs to use. Right now, we store a spare engine, a spare ambulance, and one of the cars, and the one where the car is currently the maintenance bay. We wouldn't have access to any of those if we had to shore up the whole floor again. And the other thing is, I don't know if you've seen the pictures online, we have a very small training room. When other rooms in town are not available, we have to use that. There's pictures of us. We have our med control doc there teaching rounds, which we have to do by statute. And half of the audience, the firefighters, were in the parking lot, and the rest of them were in the room, and everybody was trying to hear from him. It happens more often than you think. These rooms that are in town get used quite a bit. The police station room gets used by them, by many other groups. We've used Carby Street, but that get used by all of the town offices as well. So space is limited, and we wouldn't be able to add any area for training at all.
Thank you. Are there any other, oh yeah, thank you.
I just want to piggyback a little bit on what the chief said about if we shore up the entire basement, we saw the vehicles that are currently stored down there, those would no longer be able to be stored inside, so they would then, correct me if I'm wrong, be stored outside, which is not what we want to be doing with our millions of dollars of capital. And then another economic consideration here is the mechanic is able to do at least some work in the station. It's not tall enough to do the majority of the work. So a lot of the work is already done outside, but by shoring up the entire basement, you've eliminated what mechanic space there is in the building, forcing all of the mechanic work to be outside or outsourced to a different company, which would have a cost associated with that.
I see your hand. If you could hold that until we get through the options.
I cannot, because there's 8 options, and we're going to go with all 8. And the select board member said earlier, Congressman Lynch, who we all know personally, is going to come in and try and do a political thing this election year. Out of respect to all the people that are here, can we not have Senator Congressman Lynch tonight? We really need to get questions and answers at some point this evening. And people such as myself and many other residents here have children and other responsibilities this evening. So we're going to go through all 8. I don't want to interrupt again, but I just think that we need to, you know, I'll call the congressman myself, but I don't need to hear from him tonight. I think we need to keep this right.
Thank you. All right. Okay. I hear what you've said. I've heard the support that that has in the audience. And you have my guarantee as the moderator, and my job is that before tonight is over, everyone who wants the opportunity to speak will be able to speak, and we will be aware of the passage of time. Yep. I understand. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that input. Okay. You
So
were
just to
speaking
speak
the-
to a little bit about what the chief was saying about losing some of the square footage in the building. Some of the things that I talked about earlier, the design considerations that are required for a fire station. If you were to renovate this building, once you hit either 33% of the floor area or 33% of the building value, you then have to update the entire building to current code standards. That includes things like accessibility, that includes things like structural, that includes things like HVAC systems and whatnot. So right now there is no elevator in this building, so that takes up square footage. You would have to open up corridors and hallways, create accessible routes. You would have to probably add a stairwell into this building as well for egress, and also you would have to add things like accessible bathrooms, which are by and large twice as large as a normal regular size ambulatory bathroom in there. So that's kind of what the chief is talking about. And one other thing, just from a constructability standpoint, usually, especially in a building this old, when you start renovating a building, it's oftentimes more expensive. You get less bang for your buck on a renovation, a gut reno on a building such as this than you would if you did a tear down rebuild of the same size.
Thank you.
And then just from a logistics point of view, for board approvals, if this option went forward, it's really renovating the existing structure from the inside, and there are no significant exterior changes, so it would be unlikely that we'd have to go to either the Planning Board, Zoning Board, or the Conservation Commission for approval.
Thank you, everyone. I just had word with Westwood Media Center. So many people are watching from home or elsewhere. And so I just want to recap quickly that we had a member of the audience who expressed support. Because it wasn't on a microphone, I don't know if people at home would have been able to hear. A member of the audience felt the need to say that they would not like to see our expected visitor, Congressman Stephen Lynch, come and spend time speaking to all of us, because there are many people who are on time constraints, and they're aware of that and want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak, and that's a shared goal, that everyone has that opportunity, and we understand the reality of time constraints. So I just want to note that out loud for people at home who might not have heard, and then the rest of our questions will be in front of microphones so that folks at home can hear too. All right, moving on to option 2. This is downsizing the proposed building by removing programmatic needs. So it is not the same design, but it takes elements of that design and takes away all of the programmatic space that would have existed, making it a much smaller and different thing that I'll let the chiefs talk about.
Yes, I'll just go over it real quickly with respect to your comments. I will, so downsizing the proposed building would eliminate some of the apparatus area that would force us to remove some of our apparatus and potentially find an additional location to store some of that equipment that it will be misplaced at that time. Additionally, when you remove a bay from the main floor, that then removes some of the programming upstairs, which then we would be talking about eliminating some of the training space that the chief already spoke about that we're required to have, as well as some of the health and wellness areas like the gym and things like that, in some other areas as well. So reducing that space really has a trickle-down effect. If you remove some of the apparatus space, you're going to remove the space above and below it, including, I want to mention our mechanic space too, which is very important to us to keep our operations up and running. Thank you.
Thank you. Panelists? Anything to add?
So from a logistics point of view, because this would be altering the design that was previously approved, this one would have to go back to the planning board and possibly to the Conservation Commission for further review.
I just wanted to add too that the picture that is up there on the board is a rendering that was from the original FS1 design. That is not representative of what this option of downsizing would be. It's basically a placeholder. So we would be starting essentially not from square one, but from square two. So that facade and whatnot would not be exactly as what you see on the screen right now.
Thank you. Moving on to option 3. Option 3 is a smaller fire station on High Street. So we'd build a smaller fire station on High Street and a third fire station on University Avenue.
Exactly. So this one, operationally for the fire department, this is the best scenario. We understand the additional cost, and we understand that this just isn't in the realm of reality, but we wanted to put out every option that was presented to us and talked about. So, thank you.
Thank you.
We had mentioned staffing a little bit earlier, so right now we have 10 or 11 staff on each shift. We staff to a minimum of 9. In this example, you'd need to staff to 14 per shift. So over 4 groups, that would be adding about 16 bodies to the fire department.
Yep, I'll do that real quick. 3 engines, one at each station, so that's 3 members per engine, so you got 3, 6, 9. You'd have 2 ambulances, and that's 2 members each for that. So that's 13 there, and then you have the deputy chief as the 14th, is who's in charge of the shift. That's where we got 14.
Thank you.
So in addition to requiring 2 separate designs prepared by the architects and obviously the cost of construction, this would require 2 separate applications before the planning board. If the one at University Avenue is within University Station, there'll be a slightly different application. Instead of just a general site plan review, it's something called a project development review. They would both require Conservation Commission approval as well.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to option 4. Option 4, build a new fire station on town-owned land behind Starbucks on High Street.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry about that. The major disadvantage we noted with this property is that it eliminates our immediate access to 109 for accessibility. So our accessibility to 109 would be reduced. Being right on 109, currently as we sit on 109, we frequently have walk-in medicals and just residents coming in for different reasons whether that be permits or, like I said, medical emergencies, things like that. So being on 108, plus we don't, driving down the driveway is a little bit of a disadvantage to us because then we have to come out to a single point on 109, and with traffic the way it currently is, that creates a little bit of an obstacle for us. Other than that, this site actually would fit a building that would meet all our programming needs, and that's all I have on that one.
So I'd also like to comment on this one. This one, although it does move the fire station off of High Street, so it's not immediately visible, that has some benefits as well. It allows for the design of the building to be less tied to the historic nature of High Street, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility. The site also allows for a decoupling of the apparatus bay from the uses that are above that in the current design, the design that we already considered. That allows different sizing of the different uses. So it allows for the living quarters and potential training room to be sized differently, not dependent on the size of the apparatus bay. I find this option intriguing from that point of view. It would still require a new planning board approval and Conservation Commission approval as well. And one other aspect of this is it opens up the opportunity for the town meeting voters to consider the sale of the current fire station site on High Street, which gives us an opportunity for additional economic development. It returns that property to the tax rolls.
And just as Nora was saying, if you're able to, unstack the building design that was proposed originally for FS1 and make it a single story, obviously that is less structurally intensive, the things that I talked about before as far as structural integrity of the building. If you've got 1 story versus 2.5 or 3, it's usually cheaper to do something like that. You also remove the need for multiple egress stairs, elevator, things of that nature, so there is an opportunity for cost savings there. One other aspect of a site such as this that is large enough to accommodate a building is you could have drive-through bays for the apparatus. That could potentially reduce the number of required bays from 5 to 4 because you can pull things in from both sides, back things out, pull things in. You can finagle things, and I think the chiefs would be able to speak a little bit better about that, but it gives you an opportunity of kind of 2 ways out of each bay.
Yeah, we'll probably touch on the next slide as well, but real briefly, what the commissioner is speaking to is the ability to drive out of both sides of the station, whereas our current station, we have to come off the top side to 109, although we have the floors below. In this configuration, we would reduce our number of bays so we could drive both out the back of the building to respond to calls as well as out the front of the building.
Right. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're past the halfway point of our options. We're on to option number 5, which is similar in that it's building in that land behind Starbucks on High Street, but this is an option that is building a new combined fire station and DPW on town-owned land.
So from the fire department, this might eliminate the ability to have the drive-through stations. It would still have to be designed, and so that could do away with some of the benefit of putting it back there, but it's also a spot that you could build the DPW what they need in the future or in conjunction with this project. So everything else is the same other than it may take away the ability to have those 4 drive-through stations. Thank you.
So this option gets at what I was alluding to earlier, right? We know that there's other needs, one of which is the DPW facility down at Carby Street, and specifically the White House behind there. And the idea of combining the facilities would mean they could share some space. So we often see this as a joint police fire station, the idea a joint fire station DPW. They could share training space, mechanic space. One building would share HVAC, electricity, plumbing, and different things like that. Obviously, that comes at a higher expense. There's more dollar signs on this, but wanting to think creatively, not just about this problem, but future problems, we wanted to throw this one out here as well.
All right, thank you. Option 6, build a new fire station by eminent domain taking or purchase of other parcels on High Street.
Our comments on this is from an operational standpoint is we need a little bit more information to kind of vet this out. Without knowing where and how, we don't really know how we could operate off the unknown. That's all. That's our only comment. Thank you.
So this is an option to consider any properties within the High Street corridor. So if there are any property owners out there who are interested in selling their properties, we'd be interested in speaking to them and seeing if we could work something out, something in the High Street area. That's pretty much the only parameter. And much like the option behind Starbucks, the option 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, sorry,
Nope, 4 and 5.
4 and
you're right.
5 that we had
Yep.
just looked at, it would be very similar. We'd need Planning Board and Conservation Commission approval.
I want to reiterate that there is no identified property here. This is, echoing the call that if anybody has a creative solution or is looking to sell, that would be it. There are some parameters. The fire station would need adequate frontage for the amount of bays that it has. It would also need an apron large enough for the apparatus to pull out onto the High Street. So it's not just every property on High Street, but it is something to consider.
Thank you. Moving on to option number 7, creating a public safety complex on High Street.
So for this one, we could meet all the programmatic needs that we need in the building. The issue here would probably be parking, training. There wouldn't, a lot of times we train behind the station. It would be very cramped there. And then on top of, you'd have to tear down Town Hall and build a new Town Hall. So there's, there's a lot going on with this one.
So to echo what the chief was saying, the biggest issue, besides tearing down historic Town Hall, on this would be that you would be impacting almost all the parking in front of the police station, as well as the parking in front of Town Hall right now. That would basically all become fire station space. The parking behind the police station and then behind the current Town Hall could be used. Essentially what you would have is space on this property to have 2 of these buildings, not all 3 of them on the same property, just because of logistics and parking requirements per the zoning bylaws.
So this project is also dependent on the availability of the Deerfield School Building to take over the uses that are in Town Hall right now, and it would require approvals by the Planning Board and Conservation Commission for the reuse of the Deerfield, as well as for the new fire station that would be created at this location. And in addition, this one would also require a review by the Westwood Historical Commission for consideration of demolition of the historic Town Hall.
And while it's not listed on here, Deerfield is one option. The same would apply if a new town hall were to be built at the existing site of 637 High Street. So a variation of this example would be we tear down Town Hall, move Town Hall out of it temporarily while we build the fire station. We know the firefighters go in there. We tear down 637 High Street, build a town hall there. Again, looking at a future facilities need, we know that Town Hall has specifically some accessibility issues. But along with that coming additional dollar signs.
Thank you. And last option we're reviewing, option 8, building a new fire station on the Deerfield property.
Yeah, operationally, similar problems exist with this lot for us in the fact that it has no direct access to 109. The chief and I are committed to not consider Deerfield as an emergency response access due to the congestion and narrowness of that road. So we wouldn't be pulling out Deerfield in order to access or to respond to an emergency. We would want access directly to 109 in this scenario as well. I also wanted to point out with all 8 options that I just want to make clear, we were talking about especially the previous one, that we've identified all 8 of these options because they sit in between somewhere around Churchill Road and just beyond Dunkin' Donuts along that stretch of 109. Because operationally, if you look at the geography of Westwood, being in that general area allows us to access every point in town within the NFPA requirements. So, for example, response time. So within 4 minutes or so so if we move any further down towards 128, it takes us further away from Alder Road. If we move down towards the Bubbling Brook, it takes us that farther away from 128. So this is really the identified area in all 8 options that we spoke of. I just wanted to point that out too. Thank you.
Thank you.
This also would require Planning Board and Conservation Commission approval.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. So that concludes our review of the options. And so the next thing that's coming in, we're right around 7:20 by my clock. People might feel the need to stretch. I didn't mention at the beginning, but for anyone who's new to the space or hasn't been here in a while, you can get to the bathrooms by exiting through the side there or going down and taking your first hallway on the right if you exit at the back. We hope people will stay comfortable. So I'm going to kind of outline what our Q&A, which is a kind of conversation brainstorm, is going to look like. So far we've heard the foundation of what we're working from, the parameters under which we're working. We've seen and heard the 8 different options that are currently in front of us. Now this is our structured conversation portion. We hope as many of you as possible will share your ideas, thoughts, and questions. And so I'm going to tell you where the microphones are. I see 2 microphones, one at the top of each aisle, if you look there. The way we're going to do this is if you have an idea to share, a thought, a question, a comment, you're going to go and stand in front of those microphones. You can line up if there are a number of people. If you're not able to make it to one of those microphones or not comfortable doing so, you can raise your hand and someone will bring a microphone to you. When you get up to the microphone and it's your turn to speak, you're going to say your name and address first, just like at other meetings. We're going to have 2 minutes per speaker, and rather than try to, give timelines like you're halfway, you've got 30 seconds, I'm going to use a color system here. So when someone's halfway through, when they're at the 1 minute mark, I'm going to hold up a green piece of paper. When there's 30 seconds left in your 2 minute period, I'm going to hold up an orange. And when you've reached the end of your 2 minutes, I'm going to hold up red. And then we'll know that we're at the end of those 2 minutes. To keep things moving, we ask that everybody say your question or your comment fully before anyone up here responds. So even if you have a multi-part question or you have multiple questions, we want you to have your turn to say all of that, and then the folks up here will address it, and the next person can get ready to ask their question or give their comment. Let's see, if you've had a chance to speak at the microphone already, we ask that you let everyone else speak before you come back for a second time. And then it's important to say, we all understand that public speaking is not comfortable for everyone. If you have ideas, thoughts, or questions you'd like to share, but you do not want to do it in this forum, we hope that you know that all the panelists will be here at the end of tonight and available in front of the stage to answer one-on-one questions, have conversation with you. Also, you're welcome to email the Select Board email address at any point with your thoughts. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get my timer ready. Right? This is the big role of the moderator to keep things moving. And if anybody is ready to speak, I'll have you go up to the microphone and we'll get started. Oh yes, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Questions.
Should I speak?
Sorry.
And Andy Moore, 86 Clapboard Tree Street. I have one comment. As far as the training facility, it seems to me that we have a lot of training rooms, and the fire station should just have the fire department should have absolute priority to schedule there. They shouldn't be bumped by other groups. And the other question I have is, it seems to me that the option 8 is possibly the best option. And I thought that the police department already has direct access through a driveway that runs by the police station down to High Street. And I was wondering if the fire station couldn't use that same access. And then the other advantage I thought of that location was that that will also give access through to Gay Street, the way a lot of us cut through when traffic is bad. That's it.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer the question about the road. So the police department does have an access road right there. It's not wide enough. I don't know if you can see it on that slide. It's not wide enough for the fire apparatus to fit on it. It was meant for a cruiser, not for an engine. We looked at, could we expand it? And unfortunately, it's right over a wetlands area, and we're not able to expand that particular path.
All right. Thank you for your time.
The training room?
Can I?
Yep.
I'll touch on one of them at least real quick. In regards to the training room, I will say the library and the police department are very helpful to us. One of the major problems we have with the police department is with the library, is we have to have our trucks very close to us. So when we're in training in there, we need to park our trucks right in the parking lot there, and that creates havoc for the customers of the library coming in and out. So it creates a little bit of a bottleneck in the driveway there. If you know, there's a little rotary inside the library. So that's one of the problems that room presents. Additionally to that, when we're in those public spaces, sometimes we do talk about sensitive topics and things that are up on the road and up on the big screen when we're talking to our doctors about some of the calls that we've responded to and whatnot. So we preferably would have our own private area for that reason alone. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to do like a back and forth. So I saw the first person at this microphone. I'm going to come over here and then come back to this side. So your name and address, please.
Lori McDonald, 15 Conant Road.
Hi, Lori.
So just a couple questions. I see obviously you guys put up dollar signs. So if you had enough information to put up dollar signs to know if it's a lot or not, why is there not more transparency on what those estimated costs are in comparison to the original plan?
Yes, have you, is that all of the question?
No. You want me to keep going? Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, the staffing, which is currently 9 to 10 versus I think somebody mentioned going up to 11, like why? I'd like to understand that more. Is that because we're not responding to the emergencies? You're saying we need more people, so knowing that the population isn't necessarily increasing, I'm curious why that is. And then the renovations, again, there was a lot of the way that you guys presented it, you were all negative on many of the things, and some of the options out here seemed outrageous, so it's a little, I'm just questioning why some of those are put forward. And the renovation, there was just not a lot of specifics there, because there's need to have, nice to have, must have, and like there was not clarity, at least for me as a layperson understanding that. And then the last thing is, and you mentioned it, was there's obviously a lot of capital projects that need to be done here, and to look at them individually, so I appreciate that you brought up about DPW, and I understand that this isn't education is separate, but as a resident, we have to look at everything and space that out within what we can afford. And so it's really hard to look at one thing separately without understanding what's coming out.
Thank you for your questions. So I heard a number of them. We're going to turn over here and let people address them. Yeah.
You want staffing first?
Just a point of, if you can say which part you're addressing.
Yeah, I'm going to address the staffing question. So,
No, actually, can you guys do the dollar sign first?
Yep, I can do that. The reason why is because these are legit spitball ideas that we threw together in the last 3+ weeks. None of them are designed, so like we said, if there's a single-story building versus a two-story building, it's going to be less money, but we don't know how much less. And the reason why there's just dollar signs there, it's kind of an order of magnitude comparison. So the equivalency that I used the other day in a discussion was that if you know you're going to Chili's and you look it up on Google Maps, you're going to have a $1 sign there. You're still going to get a steak, but it's not going to be as expensive as the one at Capitol Grill that has $3 signs. So we know that one is going to be more expensive than the other. We don't know exactly how much at this point. It's just that we know option X might be more than option Y.
Well, do you have any relation in terms of the original project of 38 million, I think, how it compares to that? Like, are all of these, should we assume all of them are less, or some are more, or is there any context?
Some are more, some will be equivalent, some will be right in the neighborhood, some might be a little bit less. The problem is that just the way of the world right now is that every day is either an increase in lumber or steel or something along those lines. And if we're talking about prevailing wages and those continue to escalate with minimum wages and things like that, the longer things go, the more money it will cost, regardless of which option it is. So it might be that the one that could have been 10% less yesterday might be 10% more next week.
Yeah,
We're just not sure.
well
at this
aware of
point.
that.
so as far as staffing goes,
Hold on 1 second, Chief.
I just wanted to add to that, just so you see that the first option, the renovation, we give $3 signs to. It's still an expensive project, but it's less than the one that was turned down by voters.
Okay, that's helpful.
That's how we looked at it. The second option that is shrinking the size of the station in its existing site would also be less costly than what was presented to voters already.
Okay.
The next one after that, where we go and look at a different site,
Yeah, behind Starbucks?
behind Starbucks, between decoupling the spaces and being able to shrink spaces for that reason, and the town owning the land and having the ability then to potentially sell the other land, that would also likely be less costly than the proposal that was put before you, but we can't say
No, that's
exactly
fine.
how
That's
much
all. I
less
just
because it
wanted to
hasn't been
have,
designed.
I think we just wanted to have some context for it.
And then
That's
all
cool.
of the ones that have two buildings, whether it's the one with the fire station DPW, or the one that has a third station, or the one that has a new fire station and a new town hall, those are obviously much more expensive because they have multiple buildings. But we've indicated that just with extra dollar signs. We don't have real prices yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
the staffing, I think something?
Yep, so you mentioned population. Our call responses don't necessarily translate just to population. It has to do with what type of population we have. We have an elderly population in town right now. We have like minute clinics in town now. We have the Bridges, which is a care facility for memory. It's a memory care center. Those have all increased our calls. When I started, we were doing 2,800 calls a year. Today, we're doing over 4,000 calls a year. So if we're currently right now and we have an engine and an ambulance out, we don't have a second ambulance available, someone in your household's having a heart attack, you're going to wait for someone from Norwood or Needham or Dedham to come. And the select board and the town have said that's not acceptable.
So that's why the increase from 9 to 11, is that right?
That's where we're heading. At the last town meeting, we increased 2 shifts to 11. We didn't have the money to do all 4 shifts. I don't know if that's going to happen again this year or not. It all depends on what the town has for funding.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted, touch the last bit about the renovation. And so when we listed those priorities, the number 1 is the health and safety of the community and the firefighters, their response times, and then safety contamination space for the firefighters. In a renovation, it is not possible because of that site in order to provide the safety decontamination for the firefighters. And that's why I think you heard us saying that it wasn't an option, because that's truly really our number 1 or number 2 priority.
I want to make sure that we addressed.
Yeah, I think the other one was just the comment about the totality of all the capital projects, but probably nobody has an answer here for that. It's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to move back over to this side, and I see you, and you're going to do your name and address.
Yeah,
please.
hi. Yes, I'm David Warshay, 18 Colby Way, Westwood resident, 30 years, and president of the Chase Estate subdivision here. One of the key questions, given the 2 failed, approval votes here, is there a revised financial target of what the station should be? Because twice the 38.1 million did not pass. And is there like a new target number out there, be it like whether it's 30 million, 31, and how can, the budget be more palatable to the voters, out there? I think that's a key point. Number 1. And then the other, of course, is looking at everything in terms of asset and I would call it property tax generation. Just a random, just using an example. If you sold the current fire station site to an apartment developer with a 3-story building, maybe its land is worth a few $1 million and a couple $100,000 extra a year in property tax. The same with the Deerfield site is sold, right? For a few $1 million, just say to a luxury townhouse developer, that would, provide a few million to the town, plus a few $100,000 a year in incremental property tax exempt from Prop 2.5. So that's just, the type of thinking, out here, how to, reduce the price and generate incremental, property tax revenue exempt from Prop 2.5.
So I don't think we're at the point yet where we could fix a dollar number as a goal or as a detachment to any of these proposals. What we're doing is looking at all the possible options in the hopes of identifying an option that is as low cost as possible and still complies with all the needs that we're trying to achieve. And that takes into account the potential reuse of properties and potential sale of properties as well.
Right, I just think that a lower target to try to, better, appease the voters there, I think would help, along the way. I think the right number, whichever is the most cost-effective solution, I think is the key here.
So I think the target is to go as low as we possibly can and still fulfill the mission. And I just think it's too early to put out numbers at this point. We'll first identify one or two options that are worth pursuing to the next level, and then pursue them to a point where we get to decide which option to go forward with design, and then we'll have a better understanding of what the cost would be. But the goal is to reduce the cost as much as possible. I think everyone understands that voters do not want to spend a penny more than necessary.
Just a quick side note, does the stretch code add a lot of additional costs to these projects?
I want to first just want to touch base on, again, it's difficult to limit the design or the development of a building such as this based on a set dollar figure or a set square footage number or something along those lines, because again, you design this building in the reverse of what you would normally do. You want to build a house, you have $1 million, you figure out how you can get the best house you can with that $1 million. Unfortunately, fire station, you design what you need, and then you figure out what the cost is. So unfortunately, it's very difficult unless we know exactly what we're doing to set a set dollar number to that. The stretch energy code does add cost. It is one of the only things whenever we have a new code cycle or an increase in code requirements that eventually you can make your money back on. Based on less power usage, less gas usage, things of that nature. So on a building like this, it maybe adds 10-15% to the cost of the building, but eventually over the lifespan of the building, especially if it's something that's designed for 40 and 50 years lifespan, you would recoup those costs in the long term.
Thank you for your question and comment.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move over here.
My name is Donna Folsom, 35 Smith Drive, and I have an alternative option I'd like you to consider. What about building Fire Station 1 on the Sheehan School property? The Sheehan School is a building that has been slated for renovation or replacement for many years. I know it has been very old and in need of repair. And perhaps the school's children could be housed at the Deerfield School. I know the Sheehan property is somewhat out of your desired range on 109, but it is also very close to Highland Glen, and the access to 109 is very easy. The existing Fire Station 1 could be kept for use as administrative offices for fire stations or for the DPW. That could be an alternative use for them. So I'd just like you to consider that. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Oh, I see someone ready to speak up here, and then I'm coming right over.
I just want to speak to the response time. When you start moving it around, yes, would be right across from Highland Glen, but would be that much further from Foxville Village. So right now we are in the optimum spot for our response times.
Thank you, Chief. All right, next speaker, name and address, please.
Phil Dunkelberger, 125 Sunrise Road. Could you put option 7 back up?
I sure can.
Right. So if you look at the reddish rectangle, which is the footprint more or less of the proposed FS1, is that correct? Size.
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Right. So if you take that red and you spin it so that it comes directly off of the police station down to 109, so you now have the same orientation that you have on the other side of the street. You don't have to demolish the town hall. You have direct access onto 109. And two things happen. More than two things. One is you can build that facility while you operate the existing FS1. and then demolish it after you have been able to launch the new station. You don't have to spend $2.5 million to go to the American Legion or the tents or whatever it is that this transition idea comes, And now you have a proper public safety facility where a lot of the programmatic functions that you're concerned about can be shared between the police department and the fire station or the fire suppression functions of the public safety facility. There's a lot more I could go into on that, but I guess my time is up, and I would appreciate...
Got 10 seconds, keep going. Thank you, I appreciate that, and appreciate your idea. Thank you, or ideas. All right, come in.
Hi, Paul DeMeo, 40 Hillcrest Place. I just wanted to be clear, I think we all do. If you're not ready to make this building smaller, if you plan on coming and asking for the same needs, same location, same results going to happen. If you're truly thinking about making the building smaller, if you're not thinking about it, then you need to find another location and stop wasting our time. A couple of the options you detailed considered consolidating future projects that will need attention, like Town Hall, DPW, or further use of the drastically underused Deerfield property. This seems to make sense from a fiscal perspective. Now, this is where I need to mention that the alternative options were brought up by a very involved neighborhood last fall. We knew the proposal was overbuilt and bursting at the seam, but those concerns were dismissed by the town, and as we know, the one option was the one option. The old plan called for the width of 6 bays across the front of the building and a height of 69 feet in the back, due to a very significant land decline from the front to the back of the property. It was not a modern structure. As this project goes, I'm not a builder, but I'm going to present the obvious. A flat property with more space will allow for the construction of a modern-day fire department. Any new fire station, or more commonly seen now, public safety buildings, are built with drive-through bays, as was mentioned. If it's deemed appropriate that that 6 bays are needed, the look would be 3 bays across the front, extending through the back, three bays in the back, resulting in, what other towns do. All these towns can't be wrong. A structure like that wouldn't be anywhere near the height of 69 feet due to the building being appropriately spread out on a flat surface. It's still a box, just a more efficient one. This alone would lower the cost of the building, would allow any working group to take a fresh approach to the project, because that's what this project needs, a fresh look, a giant reset. And that's really all I have. I know you did mention the drive-through bays. I'm just confused why that wouldn't be something that we would look at, and if you can find a space that you can do that, I think that makes complete sense. And consolidating projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. I see people right, yep, go ahead. Name and address,
Brian
please.
Clinton, 44 Baker Street, Westwood. Just a couple of comments and questions as well. Well, first of all, thank you for hosting this tonight. I made it a point to be here because I was criticized by a lot of people for, being busy, being a busy parent and not attending, the first process. But I want to focus on positive things. I want to know from the select board and the staff, the obvious question here, has an appraisal been ordered for the existing FS1 site? Do we know what that has cost? What we could gain from that?
No appraisal has been ordered.
Okay, that's a big mistake. Okay, if not, how can these taxpayers tonight effectively consider or be expected to consider and evaluate any of these options without one? We need to know what we could potentially have coming back. Okay, do you think maybe we should have spent that money rather than $100,000 in hush money to neighbors and abutters? Not to mention how many untold dollars we paid for a second election that was unnecessary. That's a waste. You're the stewards of our tax dollars, and you wasted them. Just a couple of other thoughts. We were told repeatedly throughout the first process that the Deerfield wasn't an option, that was under the auspices of the school committee. I'm not hearing that tonight. I'm hearing that the school committee has nothing to do with that. But I was told that the listening session, or I call it the not listening session, on June 26th, that it was under the auspices of the school committee. So hopefully people are listening tonight. Okay? Why do we wasted 3 months? And you've spent 3 weeks spitballing these, I heard somebody say tonight? So we wasted 3 months from June 3rd through September 9th. Okay? This was identified 13 years ago. 13 years ago, and this town built 2 libraries, a police station, FS2, and a Pine Hill School. I'm for a fire station, and I know there's people in this room who know I am because I've said it to plenty of people. Okay? I support a fire station. Lastly, yeah, no, I'm not done. I will tell you, there are no profiles in coverage in Westwood this season. Okay? Nobody's going to be nominated for that after what was done between June 3rd and September 9th. Okay? There was an absence of leadership in this town. Somebody on some elected board needed to step forward and say, this is wrong. We should have been here on June 26th instead of online. I need to say those things, okay? They need to be said. I hope our select board is listening, because we're speaking English tonight, okay? So let's get this right. I want to be on board with something, a flat site, clearly more affordable. It seems to me the taxpayers' priorities don't align with the fire departments as far as being on High Street. It's the wrong site. Topographically, it's the wrong site.
If I could just respond, I just want to make one thing clear.
Absolutely.
The Deerfield School has not been made available to the town for use. So when we showed the 2 options that involved the Deerfield School, we did try to make it clear that that is if we were able to acquire the Deerfield School. So just to be very clear to everyone, the Deerfield School is under the care, custody, and control of the school department, of the school committee specifically. And if it is an area that we think is worth pursuing, that the general consensus is that that is worth pursuing, one of the options that involves that, then we will continue to engage with the school committee to see if the town could acquire that site, but it is not available at present.
All right, we're going to move over here. Thank you.
Steve Springer, 456 Hartford Street at the corner of Mill Street. Could you display option number 2 again for me?
Yes, I can. Option 2.
Remove an apparatus. Yeah. I like this idea. It seems to me that the fire station, it could be operated with one less bay, and perhaps some of the spaces on the second floor that are anticipated for future use might not be included. I know that's generally good thinking, but it is also more expensive. And this way we can still have this optimum location, which I think is important, and you can build on the design that has already been made, so the present architects understand the structural issues, and they would just have to shrink the building by one bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Name and address, please.
Thank you. Peter Schuler, 779 Gay Street. First, I'd like to thank the Select Board and all the panel members for providing this information to us. I think it's helpful. Of the options that I've seen, the ones that include perhaps adding additional buildings that are in need of renovation as part of a total improvement plan, I think they have my interest. The use of Deerfield School also has my interest. I have yet to hear from the school department any particular use or plan they have for the Deerfield School, so it seems to be sitting as an unused resource. So that the use of Deerfield seems to make sense. The thing that I question, though, is the voters who go to the ballot and make decisions have told the select board twice that they're not going to spend $40 million on a fire station. And I don't think they said no because they don't support the fire department. I don't think they said no because they wanted a bigger building. I don't think they said no because of some other reason. I think the cost is your biggest obstacle. So when you come to us with options that are the same or more, I'm struggling to understand how or what you're going to do to convince the voters that those options make sense. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to come over here.
Hi, Tara Themistocles, 294 Clapboard Tree Street. I really wanted to know how you guys are going to push this out and engage the community to make this decision. I really think these meetings, the turnout is not the same way as the voting. 15 minutes to go make a vote and say no. And in May, we all sat here and you guys decided to go forward and spend the money with Doran Whittier. It's hard for me to understand stay-at-home parents cannot get to these lengthy meetings. There's an Instagram page on the town. I'm just shocked that we still don't use that kind of media to push it out to parents that can't get here. It's really important as a community to bring us all together. I have plenty of friends that are at home with their children that can't be here, and I think I would love to know how you're going to make this decision. And I think you should engage the community much, much more. It's important and it needs to happen.
Thank you. Someone want to speak to me? Okay. Right here.
Hi, Paula McLaughlin, 39 Hawthorne Street. Thank you for bringing everyone together. I feel like there's a lot of emotion in this room, and I enjoy listening to what everyone has to say. But I mostly want to hear from the gentlemen up there who are doing this job. And so I'd like to know, I hear mentioning about staffing and, slight increases. I've also heard some people in this room say, well, the population isn't growing. Well, where I live in Islington, there's another apartment complex going up with, which will be filled with people. A gentleman just mentioned if they sell the fire station property, they could build a 3-story apartment complex again. I mean, these are adding people. I don't see Westwood's population going down, and I do see the population aging. I'm the same age as a lot of the buildings you're talking about. So when you're saying, oh, they're 60, I'm like, wow, that's me. So I get what happens when you're 60. But I would like to know that we are building something for the future of Westwood. And so when you talk about the staffing, are you talking about what's going to be good staffing for the next 5 to 10 years, or what we think we might need in 30 or 40 years? Because I have 3 generations of my family living in this town, and I want to make sure that my grandson, who's going to grow up in this town, has what he needs, and you have enough staffing, accommodate. You just don't build a house for what you have right now. You have to build it for the future, or else we'll be doing this again in 25 years. So I'd like to know what you all think.
Thank you.
So part of my job is to advocate for more staffing. You look at what just happened in Fall River. It's a big outcry right now. But I also understand that that has to be done within the constraints of the town's budget. We have conversations every year, and we're working towards increased staffing. As far as 5 years, 10 years, the makeup of the town is drastically different than it was 10 years ago. So who knows? But I do know that every day our call volume keeps increasing, and my job is to advocate for the safety of the town and the safety of my firefighters. And that's where I stand on that.
All right, and just one other thing. Any proposal that's put forward to this town that doesn't include a proper decontamination center shouldn't even be, it's an insult to these gentlemen. So thank you.
All right.
Good evening. Jennifer Perkins, 17 Burke Street. I think the big question for me is probably one that Stephanie would need to answer. And that is, as we've built all of these properties and these public amenities across the town, what debt are we carrying? What debt is left? And when do some of these things fall off? I understand the desire to have something. I'd like to have a $2 million house, but I can't borrow that much money because I can't support that. And I think that's my concern here, is that not just with the fire station, but with all of the other priorities in town, as you have alluded to tonight, that we need to make a decision as a whole and understand what the entire budget looks like and what the entire debt process looks like. Because by excluding certain things from the conversation, we're actually just going to load more debt on top of more debt on top of more debt. And so I think I would love to see some sort of a schedule or some sort of information that shows me what debt is being spent now to pay off the other pieces that we've bought, and when that stuff falls off, where we might have more room to fund more of this within Prop 2.5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. So when we talk about our debt budget, that's usually why I say exempt and non-exempt debt. There's definitely two different buckets, right? So right now, our exempt debt budget is about $4 million. The majority of that is made up with the debt service for the Pine Hill Elementary School and the library. So the next round of non-exempt debt that falls off, I believe, is around FY 32-33, which would be the library. So that's still a number of years away. The Pine Hill School was just borrowed for a couple years ago, and that's a 30-year bond. So we still got ways to go on that one. When we talk about non-exempt debt, so that's sort of every year when I talk about within the operating budget, we have one bucket of money that's spread towards all our services in town, right? We are limited within Prop 2.5 to increase the tax levy limit every year to 2.5% plus that exempt debt that I just talked about. So that budget right now is about $3.2 million in our annual operating budget. Within that is the Fire Station 2, the police station, road improvement bonds, and then a number of projects that were just approved the last couple of town meetings, the high school roof renovation, a few vehicles, things like that. So that's sort of our normal debt within that is things that might have shorter terms or roll off more easily. That is a very tight budget. So say, I'm just using this as an example, but the estimated debt service for the previous project that was put forward was about $2 million a year. So that would be $2 million on top of the 3.2 total budget we have right now. That would mean that other areas of the operating budget would need to be cut, or we would need a brand new inflow of taxation funds. So that's why, and we always talk about this, I think at least from what I can at least confidently say the last 4 years that non-exempt debt budget has been level funded because it's tough to find, right, new funding sources to add to that. So we really time our projects to come online. Like we might postpone a smaller project or buying a $1 million or $2 million vehicle a couple of years because we know, the modulars or that the debt for that is falling off in FY30. So we really try to stick within that. It's hard to fit anything within that. So when we talk about projects like this, the reason I say typically they're funded with debt exclusions, unfortunately, because I know that does add to the tax bill, is because that's dedicated taxation that is added on top of that limit that is to specifically fund that project. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, we were here, we're going to go over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Petroselli, 30 Rock Meadow Road. I was struck by, in your example of option 2, you described it as a building that was removing programmatic needs. And I hear what you say about when it comes to building public safety buildings as opposed to private buildings, that you need to do it in reverse. You need to start with what your needs are and then build the building around that. I think we all hear that. I think the thing that I know for myself and for many of us where we got stuck on the previous fire station and that we're still not hearing answers to is the process by which, up to this point, the town has determined what those programmatic needs are. Because from our view, from the information that you have made available, that was done by a very insular group without any outside objectivity or outside points of view. And I think that goes part and parcel with the entire relationship that the town now has with Dorr and Whittier and the expansive extent that they have when it comes to deciding what Westwood's needs are and what those buildings are going to look like. So my question is twofold. When it comes to designing the new building, are you going to reevaluate the determination of those programmatic needs by using some outside criteria or outside source to evaluate that? Because we want an objective evaluation as to what that is. We want the firefighters to have what they need, but we want an outside evaluation objectivity of that. And are you willing to consider having a different architect other than Dorr and Whittier bid for the new building, given that they have been the exclusive architect and construction manager and design person that Westwood has used for, I think, the last 15 years without any competition that we can see?
I'm happy to take the beginning of that, and then I'll hand it off. Dorr and Whittier has a long history in Westwood, as you alluded to. They have a lot of experience with both schools and public safety buildings. And so when a proposal is made with a group that has a lot of experience, and I think I wasn't here for FS2 in the police station, but the relationship had been working up to that point. When we're talking about independence, right, the Dorr and Whittier created or organized the needs assessment that's in the facility study. What's the programmatic need? The point of, or one of the points of an owner's project manager, an OPM, is to look at the design and say, town, that's not right. That's our independent looker to say, this is right, this is wrong, this is too much, this is not. The OPM has been with us along the way, making cuts to this, saying, is this necessary? So that is the independent that we utilize as part of the project. To the second point of the question, would we consider using a different architect? I would say yes. It's a totally different project. I think Nora had alluded to, or someone had, that if option 2 minus 1 bay is the preferred option that goes forward, it might make sense to stay with the same architect because it's mostly the same building just lopping off of a bay. But if we're saying, all right, we're going to one of the other different options, it would be the start of a whole new project, would be opening it up entirely.
If you're telling us that OPI has in fact examined the data that went into Dorr and Whittier's needs assessment and has signed off on it, why has that information not been made available? Because we've never seen anything that says OPI has evaluated that and has agreed with it.
I don't have an answer to that. That was never a document that was requested of me. I can say emphatically that the OPM has signed off on the programmatic needs of the department, as stated in the facility study.
Molly, if at all helpful, can I add a procurement piece?
Oh God, there you go. I was like, who's that voice?
Me over here. So I would just highlight, which might go with what you were trying to say. I talked about procurement at the beginning, and I touched a lot on construction and how we're but there's rules where we have to follow Mass General law and pick the lowest qualified bidder for construction. With design and architect services, it is different requirements, so we base it on the qualifications of the firm. We choose that way, and then we negotiate a fee. So it's not as strict as construction on the sense of choosing the lowest bidder, so there's more options for choice, if that helps at all.
I'll just touch on real quick the outside input, so to speak, the things that I spoke about earlier. After programmatic needs are established by the chiefs, the fire department, basically there's several NFPA standards that have to do with NFPA 1585 is contamination control. There's 1581 is decontamination areas, things like that. Along with the building code, a lot of those things are based on occupant load, meaning how many staff do you have in the building at a time, how many engines and apparatus are you running, and then also square footage of the building lends itself to things that are required, such as, like I said before, egress stairs, number of bathrooms, things of that nature. So it's starting with what these guys need to do their job and what they tell us to do. I say us, but designers say, this is how many people we have in the building, this is what we need to have to do our job, and then you reference those standards, and those standards tell you what you need to put in that building to make that work for those individuals.
And to expand upon that, the site that's chosen makes a difference. So you know what the components are, how those components fit together into a building will be different on different sites. The current site has physical constraints that led to the design that was rejected by the town. Another site might have fewer constraints.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome to start over here.
John Harding, 148 Forbes Road. I spent quite a bit of time today reviewing the Doran Whittier feasibility study and report, which was issued in October of 2023. They, at that time, rejected many of the conceptual options that had been put forward in terms of alternative site locations to go with what they deemed the preferred option that the select board then jumped on, tried to sell it to the town, and it didn't work. So we're now 2 years later with no project. Really, we have nothing. And we spent a lot of money for them. We spent a lot of money on these votes. So my question tonight is for the assembled group and the select board, what is your timeline for expediting to come up with a new alternative? The conditions that our men and women face cannot be just indefinitely delayed while we go through this process. And without blaming anyone for the delay, we have lost years on this process. And so what timeline has now been set to consider any and all alternatives and arrive at a decision on what is going to be recommended to the town to support?
Thank you. Is that your full question? Okay.
Yes. Timing.
So I will say that this is the start of a new process. I think what the town heard loud and clear from voters was that voters wanted more of a say in a participatory design process that led to an appropriately sized and appropriately priced fire station for our community. This is the start of that participatory design process. I can't tell you exactly how long it'll last. This is the first stage where we're reaching out to our community members to ask for their input into what designs they think are worth pursuing. Every resident who is at this session, every resident who watches this on Westwood Media Center or reads about it on the town's website will have an opportunity to recommend one or two options that they feel are worth pursuing, and then the select board will consider all of that input and narrow it down, and we will move forward, continuing to invite residents into the design process as we move forward. We'll move forward as quickly as possible while being as thorough as possible and trying to achieve the lowest cost option that fully meets the needs of our community.
Right. But has any rough target date been set? In other words, are you trying to get this done so that town meeting could consider it next May, or you can't even be that specific?
The select board will determine whether there needs to be a special town meeting or whether this will be considered at the next May town meeting. I think a lot of that will depend on what option is pursued.
Thank you. Right here.
Thank you. I'm Ford Spalding, and I've been in Westwood for 2 years. Came from the town of Dover. I live at 10 Longwood Drive. I've been involved in 3 building projects as a citizen. I was not in the building committee, but as a citizen and citizen committee. We built a high school in Dover-Sherburne the same time you did here in Westwood, and that was a brand new middle school and high school athletic fields, and that was built at that time, which was 30 years ago, 25 years ago, for about $45 million. I did a school up at Minuteman, which is a technical school, vocational school, 125,000 square feet. We built it for $145 million. Today's school buildings, the same size, are going for about $300 million, $200 to $300 million. Time is not on our side. This is a public building process. Public building has costs that you might not have when you do your house. You have to follow certain rules. You have certain code requirements you have to do. It's a very expensive process. So we just shouldn't wait too much longer, because we're not going to find anything that's probably less expensive, and I hate to say that. We just did a community center in Dover. It opened up in September. It's beautiful if you want to go see it. It's 20,000 square feet for $24 million. 5 years ago, a proposal was brought to the town for 40,000 square feet for $19 million. We're half that size and we're more money. So I'm just cautioning you, the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. Secondly, with a firehouse, we can't cut it in half so we can get to the number you want, because then they're not going to be able to provide the services that we need. So what I would suggest is you form a citizen committee, the selectmen form a citizens committee, we work with professionals that can help us do it, and we communicate with the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Anthony Mullen, 126 Pond Street. I'm a member of the school committee. I just wanted to address some of the questions around Deerfield, just to provide some clarity. So first of all, question what is Deerfield being used for now is actually being quite used for a lot of things. The IT department is there, Westwood Media is there, Recreation is using it a lot, so we have been continuing to use the building. The next question is when we closed Pine Hill, we formed a Deerfield Reuse Committee to think about if there were any educational uses for that building. That committee has been meeting. Part of the data we were waiting for is we did our own facility study that we received in the spring. And most importantly, at the last school committee meeting in September, we announced that we plan to make a vote on the decision of what we're going to do with Deerfield at the December school committee meeting. So that is only 2 months away. We announced at the September meeting, so there will be clarity on the Deerfield use within a couple months. I just want to provide that clarity for the community tonight.
Thank you. I see. Tammy, I see a hand. Excuse me, could you go to a mic so the people at home could hear the question, if you want to ask? Thank you.
It's just a point of clarification that at a previous meeting, we heard that Dorn and Whittier is actually on the committee that is looking at the reuse of the Deerfield property.
That is not true.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Paul Krupinski. I'm at 182 Stanford Drive. Sitting here tonight, as well as going back to last May at the town meeting, the 2 elections, I've heard things such as tonight there was the presentation and many of the options. There was kind of negative feedback coming from the panel rather than just for each option, rather than some of the positives, that it was an insular group that's been developing the plan. In my own experience, I've been in town for 21 years. I felt like the town meeting was presented in a very different way than many other town meetings. And I also, from being in the community, talking to my neighbors, I think that there's a distrust based on the second election being put forward in front of the town. I think that personally, and it's not a question, we need to take a deep breath, step back. We can probably move forward by doing that first, doing a complete reset, and maybe even forming a community committee by precinct, because each precinct in this town now has separate needs. That's pretty much my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Andrew Jonick, 129 Fisher Street. There's been some talk about staff increases. It's a little confusing in the FAQs online. My understanding is there are 9 firefighter staff at the moment, 2 more making 11, but we want to balance it, so they're going down to Islington, leaving 6 at FS1. It also says here that you're not planning on obtaining any new equipment. When I look at the numbers, the existing fire station is 14,800 square feet, and the proposed one that was voted down is 36,000. That's more than double. I'm wondering if the town can post a room-by-room breakdown of the existing building, you know, every room, every bathroom, the bays, and then what was proposed, so people can just see the facts? You know, why is the fire station growing this large if there's no new equipment and the personnel is staying roughly the same? Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you guys want to, I got some stuff.
Go ahead, no, well, I'll work off of you, go ahead.
Just real quick, some of it's difficult to compare apples to apples on that, just because so much of the space that's in the current FS1 building is being used for multiple uses. And that's one of the reasons why there's so much of an increase in the square footage of the building. You know, I don't want to speak for...
But it'd be helpful to see like what are the
right,
uses.
Right, no, I'm
and,
just trying
like,
to, I don't want to speak for them, but I know...
Decontamination, I know that's probably totally needed, but how big
Right,
is it?
right.
Yeah.
I know one example is I've gone in and at their dining room table, they're having meetings rather than having lunch type thing. I guess the other...
So there's a lot of things. Down in the basement, we have all our EMS supplies, including medications, in the hallway there because we have no place to securely store them. That was going to be one room by itself in the new building, so we could have our medications behind a locked door. Like I mentioned before, the training room was going to be a lot bigger so that we could actually train and in an environment like this where everybody could hear. The gear right now, our turnout gear, is in lockers behind the station, behind the apparatus. So when you back in the ladder truck, it's actually hitting one of the lockers. All of that is supposed to be behind closed doors, separated from the apparatus. So now you're talking more room off the back of the apparatus floor. We have 3 offices basically in one tiny little room up front. So you've got the deputy, the lieutenant, and the firefighters working like this close to each other, and it can be problematic. Someone messes up and the deputy needs to do some counseling. He gets in the car and drives around because we have no place to do it. There's no privacy in the building. You go upstairs, we have the firefighters refer to it as Gen Pop because all the lockers are crammed in there. They got 3 beds in there. Mold on the ceiling. The wall's cracking. I just had to have that repaired. There's no extra storage for anything. The attic is unusable because we had mold up there. That's been sealed. So the amount of programmatic needs comes down to all of these spaces that we're making the best of right now. That's what we do. We do more with less. That's how firefighters work. And by doing that, it's created the impression that, oh, nothing's wrong. They're fine. Well, we're not fine. We spoke to a female firefighter who had to stop pumping because she had no place to do it in the station. That's illegal, that we couldn't provide her privacy. Illegal. So these are the things that we were talking about.
Thank you. I just, to the select board, can the spreadsheet be posted?
Yeah,
that was the
I
question.
think we would have to do a little bit of digging to get what the actual square footage usage is of the current spaces. I can work with the chiefs on doing something along those lines. And then just to reiterate what the chief was saying, there's a lot of spaces in that building. The building was designed and originally constructed in 1948 and most recently renovated in 1975. A lot has changed in that time frame, not just from the firefighting world, but in Westwood itself. So that's part of the reason why things are being crammed in, doubled up, et cetera.
Yeah, we need you to go to the mic, sir. Okay, the people at home can't hear you. Microphone.
Mike, right there.
Right there.
You're talking about small things in terms of spaces. When we're talking about the meeting room on the second floor, it's 1,450 square feet. When we're talking about the wellness room, it's 900 square feet. When we're talking about the day room, tell everybody what a day room is. It's 600 square feet. So when you start talking about where the storage of the EMS stuff is, instead of the big spaces, that meeting room, according to Joe Previtera told me, that meeting room is that big because they have to train the EMT people once a month. What happens to 1,450 square feet for the rest of the month?
Well, I'd like to try to address a couple of the more specifics of that. When we speak in regards to the 9 staffing to 11, 9 is the minimum operational staff members we have. We also have space, or we would be seeking space for the chief, myself, our EMS coordinator who runs our entire EMS program, as well as our deputy in charge of training and fire prevention. In addition to that, we have an office manager as well. So there's 5 administrative staff that also work in the same building. So some of the space that we're looking for would go towards the administrative staff. From an operational side, you're right. Once a month is underselling the amount of time we use our training room. We use it quite a bit. And to answer your specific question as to you only use it once a month, that's not true. We've cut out other areas of the building or the programmatic needs to utilize that space for a day-to-day basis for training as well. Our crews, be it the 9 to 11, we get together and train on a daily basis. That room would be used daily. We would just need it large enough to accommodate the entire department on specific occasions. The chief mentioned our EMS rounds. The chief mentioned our EMS rounds, which are required by the state OEMS, Office of Emergency Medical Services, requires us to meet with our doctor on a frequent basis, as well as any non-fire practical training would be conducted in there. So if they wanted to come in and teach a class on ventilation or ice rescue, or you name the subject, we're not just the fire department anymore, we're really an emergency service wide. It could be car accidents, it could be fires, it could be any number of emergency services that we provide. We train on that stuff on a daily basis, and that's what that room would really be used for. I hope that answered. The day room, yes. The day room is simply the living quarters for the downtime in between calls when we're not training, we're not on calls. That's where, I would compare that to your house. That's where our staff lives during the evening times when we have some downtime and in between calls. I hope that, does that answer your question?
I just wanted to point out one other thing. So the gentleman's referring to some square foot numbers that are on the FS1 project that has been rejected and is no longer under consideration. We're looking at a new design, and that new design will have new sizes for the various facilities. Part of that design, as was discussed at town meeting and prior to the elections, was based on the size of the apparatus floor and the space above that apparatus floor. So if we're looking at a new design, whether it's at the existing station site or at a new site, it will be a new design, and new calculations of spaces will go into that design.
Thank you, Nora. And I just want to pull back for a second in my role as moderator to someone who was up and asking their question before we moved on rather abruptly. When we talk about those new designs, we understood and heard your request that we would take the spaces that's currently being used, understand that things are being doubled up and tripled up in those spaces, and consider showing and making sure everyone's aware of what new space would look like to serve those needs. So I just wanted to make that clear. And also, we're coming right up on 8:30, which means we've been at this portion of tonight's forum for about an hour. So it would make sense if people are getting antsy. I've noticed people standing. We're going to keep moving through those questions. We're here for as long as needed. We're going to be up front when we wrap up this portion of things to talk to people individually. For the remainder of the time, I just want to say that if someone's speaking up at the microphone and they're 2 minutes and you have something to add or you have an idea, please get in front of a microphone so that people at home can hear, and please go to the end of the line and you can reference back. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Phil Shapiro, 159 Mill Street, 47-year resident. I want to thank the selectmen, the people who were in favor of this, the people who were opposed to this, for all putting a lot of work and effort in. Only, I think and hope, in the best interest of the town. So that's a good thing. I think one of the things, stepping back from this a little bit, is multiple uses of space is not a bad thing. So finding spaces that can be used for multiple purposes, or spaces in the police station or DPW or Deerfield that might be used for something that's only done very rarely, or where there's a need for privacy. Not everything has to be within this one building and only used for one thing, just in case anybody cares. I've been very disappointed in the tone of some of what's been said about this, and I thought maybe I would try to put it in this way. I've got 2 daughters. If one of them was a taxpayer and one of them was a firefighter, I would want this facility to be something that they could both agree on. That it's not everything that one of them wants, and it's not everything that the other one wants. That it's something where folks can meet in the middle and have a reasonable discussion about how much you really need that, and whether the police chief could let you use this room for that purpose. You know, not everybody has to have a private office. Not every function has to be in a separate thing. So that's how I was thinking about it, and I do hope this starts to wrap up, because I hope the Yankees are losing now, and I want to go home and watch them walk off Game 3 out of there. So
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, Carol Morrison, Deutsch, 38 Oak Street. I think that we're all dancing around sort of what the bottom line of this issue is, and the firefighters seem to be the ones caught up in this, and they've been caught up in it for months. My question is, does the town have a capital planning committee, and who are they? I looked on the website, I looked around, I could not find one. I did find a comprehensive steering committee formed in 2000 that hasn't done anything since 2020. A municipal facilities task force, which has no information on the town website about its mission, members, meetings, anything. A long-range financial planning committee, which seems to have met last January and spent the meeting talking about potentially implementing a real estate transfer fee, which in simplified terms is a fee or a tax imposed on high-value homes when they're sold. So who's responsible for the long-term capital planning for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Towns around us all have committees, all have documents that they publish. This is our 5-year capital plans, our 10-year capital plans, our 15-year capital plans, so people understand what's coming down the road. Our town doesn't seem to have that. So while I was looking and trying to find all of this, I did find a 5-year capital improvement plan, which was as far out as I could get, which does talk about the needs of the town. And not even taking into consideration the requests that were in it, like $68,000 for a car for the town administrator, $600,000 for pickleball courts, $650,000 to redo the tennis courts, $250,000 for a pavilion and a ropes course. I mean, those just seem kind of out there to me. The large projects that are coming down the pike are the DPW, looking for $18 million, town hall renovations with the cost of TBD in that, but an earlier study showed it at $10,500,000. Senior center expansion with costs mentioned of $6 million earlier, $8 million potentially, now TBD. The schools want $70 million for the Sheehan, but we all know that's not the end of it for the schools, because, truth be told, everyone knows that Thurston Middle School is the worst building in this town, and that just keeps getting pushed off. The town did publish their feasibility study, where they asked for a low of $191.5 million to a high of $307.8 million for their schools over the long term, recommended by Doran Whittier. I'll admit it, okay.
Carol, I just want to let you know that you're at the 2:20 mark.
Okay? Who's prioritizing the needs of the town, and why do we not maintain our buildings throughout their life cycle rather than coming to town when they're in such bad conditions it's determined to be easier to just build a new one?
I will attempt to. Please keep me honest if I miss any of the answers, because I want to make sure I hit as many as I can. And I'm very impressed you researched what a transfer fee is, so and watched Long Range, so thank you for that. So we don't have, I guess, you said a capital committee? A capital planning committee. So each year, we're going through it actually right now. This is the time of year where we create what we call our 5-year capital improvement plan, which is the document you referenced. So that does get posted every year online. So right now, we're developing the one for FY27 through FY32. And that is sort of, I call it a wish list. That's what we sort of call it, because this is all the departments, they submit what their needs are for the department, you know, vehicle replacement schedules, roof replacements, parking lot, ongoing, I'm trying to think, like, safety equipment that they have to replace each year. So large capital investments, they submit those requests, what they come up with for estimated costs, and then we go back and forth over the course of a month or so, asking follow-up questions, and the document gets put together and posted online. That is what goes into the select board's conversations from October all the way through February for what will actually go to town meeting as individual capital articles. So I wouldn't say there's really a committee on that. It's just the process that it goes towards the select board. It's their capital budget. It goes to the FinCom public hearings. Residents can weigh in on those projects, and then they go to town meeting to ultimately be voted on as a capital article. We do have our long-range financial planning committee. The reason that has sort of been offline for a little while is because we've been waiting for the town's master facility plan, which just recently got completed. So that's going to pick back up. Stay tuned for that. That'll pick back up again when we go through that document and we're looking long-term for these building projects and priorities and costs and things like that. So that'll sort of be, the plan is to have that committee be a starting point for those conversations happening. The TBD in the book, it used to be that departments would submit these requests for large building projects. You know, the DPW director knows that they need a new sewer facility or a new maintenance building there, or the fire department knows they need a new station. And a lot of times the numbers behind those weren't really based on anything that I feel are really solid, such as a design or architect firm coming in and giving numbers. So we made the decision a little while ago to move those to TBD with the facilities plan, knowing that was coming out and knowing that we would get more solid numbers as we start that process. Did I miss anything?
So the select board are the folks who prioritize all of those capital budget needs that come to you for the next 5 years. Is that correct?
I gather all the department's needs, requests, we put them in that book, and it is presented to the select board, and it is their budget. So at the end of the day, yes, the operating capital budget is the select board's budget that goes to town meeting, but it's also vetted by the Finance and Warrant Commission, public forums, people come out and speak, and then the ultimate decider is the voters at town meeting.
But they can only decide on what you've put forth. They can't decide on other projects that potentially, because in 2013 or 14, when the initial study came out saying that Westwood needed 3 public safety issues, Islington Fire, Police, and Fire Station 1, we did Islington Fire, we did the police, and we did nothing for 11 years until FS1 suddenly comes up, and everybody's shocked that the building is in dire need of repair. And it came on the tails of a $90 million elementary school that got put in front of it. So if FS1 is in such bad shape, risking the safety of the firefighters in the town, why did we build an elementary school in front of it? That's my question. Who prioritized that?
I don't know if I can specifically talk to that, but I will say that's sort of what we're hoping to do with the long-range committee and that process with the new facility plan, looking at all the buildings moving forward and what the needs are.
So Stephanie,
Rob, I see you up there.
Yeah, I'll build on that. And there are a couple of questions and points that have been made. Ms. Perkins asked a very interesting question about when things start to roll off. That's one of the things that we looked at as part of the Long-Range Financial Planning Committee. Stephanie talked about when the library rolls off in roughly 2033. One of the other things that at some point will roll off, we just don't know because some of it is a moving target based on healthcare costs, is our funding for our OPEB liability. And that's a pretty big number that would help us with other debt for other large projects. So, we are looking at these things. This Long-Range Financial Planning Committee is designed to do just that, right? Let's admit it, we have more need than we have resource. I think we can all agree on that. So we have to be very planful and creative in how we repurpose existing buildings, a la Deerfield and some of what you've heard here. And quite frankly, that is a process now that we have the facility studies to be able to have those conversations around our collective kitchen table here, because guess what? We may need to topple a couple of dominoes in order to get everything done to address all the various needs and do so within our ability to pay. So we hear you, we understand it. That's part of why we commissioned the facility studies to begin with, was to be able to have a really thoughtful conversation around what are the needs and what's the rough order of magnitude of doing nothing and having to pay maintenance costs versus some renovation and repurposing versus we can't afford to build everything new, so what do we want to try to build new? And that's what that committee is all about. So we will be getting together again starting in November now that we have the facility studies and we've filled a few vacancies. But I do want to talk about a couple of other things that I think we can agree on, right? Let's start from a place of agreement. So I think we all agree that we have to use land owned by the town. And I think we all agree that it really should be inside of the response time radius that the chief and assistant chief have talked about. So that limits the number of options. Now, while it was touched on that these were sort of spitball, no, they really weren't. Several of them were talked about, though not in sort of visual form, back when we were coming up with the options. The option that was vetted and approved for go out to design bid back in January of '24 was the thing that we just voted on. So, there are a number of options here. We want you all to feel engaged and informed as to what the trade-offs are relative to those options. That's the piece that I think there was lack of visibility and therefore mistrust on. So we're inviting everybody in. We're showing you how the sausage is made, right? These are the options that we have. We want to have a thoughtful discussion around what those, I appreciated the thought around the Sheehan School, right? That's a piece of property, it does fall outside the radius, but that's at least offering an alternative solution because we have limitations. So, I actually really appreciate all of you being here because to someone else's earlier point, it's really hard for us to make these conversations, or make these decisions without active conversation. And it's hard to get people engaged. We try. We try. Everything that we do is broadcast on Westwood Media Center. It's there for you to view after the fact. So this is the first step in regaining the trust, in having you be part of the conversation and understanding the various options that are before us. I think the thing that we should all be committed to is the safety of the men and women of the department who provide for our safety and for trying to meet their operational need as best we can from a financial standpoint. So I just wanted to touch on several of the questions that I've heard from a number of different people. That's why we have the facility study. That's where that will be going. We want to have a master plan. We did have a master public safety plan. At a certain point, a decision was made to press pause and allow the schools to go forward with a significant need that they had. So we find ourselves here. We're not surprised by the condition of the fire station. It was identified 12 years ago, and it has been held up by Lally columns and I-beams since then. So this is not an issue of neglect. It's an issue of trying to prioritize, as Stephanie talked about, and have things scheduled as other things roll off. Everyone here is trying to do the best thing in the long-term interest of the community with a high sensitivity to everyone's ability to pay.
Rob, I appreciate your getting back, but the question was the prioritization of the projects that are in place. You've now put a fire station in front of us, and the question has come up, what's behind it? What's following? Thus the 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan.
And that's what will come out of the Long-Range Financial Planning Committee.
And will that come out prior to the next vote for whatever the fire station is going to be?
It's unlikely because I think there will need to be a significant amount of discussion around how we prioritize and assess all of those various needs and stack those things. But this is the number one priority in terms of what needs to be addressed.
Right. So not necessarily fair to the voters, but okay, I'll take your...
Can I speak to one more thing? You said that, yes, the building's falling down, the building that's cracked, and 10 years ago, we didn't know why firefighters were dying of cancer so much greater than the normal public. We didn't acknowledge mental health in the fire service. All of these things have come to light. My priority is getting that building safe for these people so that we don't have any more names on the wall over in front of Station 2.
I don't think anyone in this town disagrees with that. I think everyone in this town 100% supports the fire department. That's what I said from the beginning. I feel like you guys have just been stuck in the middle.
I agree, but you spoke to the urgency, and from my push, that is as bad as the Lally columns and the cracked walls.
Okay.
We're going to go right here. Thank you.
Doug Obie, 435 High Street. First off, I want to reiterate a prior gentleman's comments that this should have been happening the latter part of June. In 35 years, I've never seen a vote ignored by the town. That aside, I've been listening to everyone tonight, and what I've heard is a lot of justification for everything the proposed fire station had in it and why you need every aspect of it. And it seems to me, if you could put up option 4.
Sure.
That this makes the most sense because the building commissioner said building something on just one level is less expensive. It's land we own. If necessary, we could take something from an eminent domain to make more of an access to 109 from that back, maybe to the right side of Starbucks. And then, if in fact we've cut the cost of the building, maybe you could have more of what you want in it, as opposed to a $40 million project that most of the town felt was grossly oversized at 2.5 to 3 times the existing facility. I understand all the justifications of why you need all that extra space, so let's do it in a more affordable manner in land we own and just make a better access. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
How you doing? Matthew Kavanaugh, 40 Whitney Ave. I just have a question because I'm new to this whole town politics thing. What's the next step? So it seems like you guys have we've started honing in on some ideas, right? That was a great idea. Shrinking the fire station is another idea. The taxpayers clearly have said we're not paying that much money, so find a way to lower it. And those seem like 2 good options. What's the next step? Who does what next? And how do we stay engaged so that we're not chasing, the web and whatever else to try to forcefully keep ourselves involved?
Sure, I'm happy to take that. As Nora said at the beginning, or a couple minutes ago, this is the first of the conversations. The select board is here listening. That's their capacity here. My understanding is that they're going to be taking and digesting everything that we've been talking here and taking all of our notes, and they will have a robust discussion about that at their October 20th select board meeting, 6 p.m., and it will be held via Zoom. That's the next step. After that, I can't say because I don't know which options. There's a lot to digest here.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically they narrow into 2, and we start drilling into those 2 to get more detailed, right? To figure out which one's the most feasible, cost-effective, right? Who's going to do that feasibility study? Is that going to be internal? Is that going to be we issue an RFP for outside assistance? How's that process work?
So first of all, at the end of this meeting, there are posters out on the wall in the lobby where each of you will be able to identify which of the projects you are most interested in pursuing. People at home who are watching on Westwood Media Center can do the same by sending it in through the QR code that's made available to them. When we have all of that information, the select board will narrow it down. Hopefully, we will come up with 2 leading proposals, and then an internal town group will measure those proposals and come up with ballpark estimates of what they will cost. The select board will then consider those proposals with those ballpark estimates and choose one of them, and then we will decide the design process based on which proposal it is. As Molly pointed out, if we went with option 2, which is just shrinking down the existing building we already have, it would be a simple design process of going with Doran Whittier to take the designs they already have and cut some pieces out, move them around, play Tetris with that building. If it's something different, then we make...
One point on that. Sorry to cut you off. I apologize. I know it's rude. Doran Whittier specifically said at a previous town hall that you can't just take an existing design and retrofit it. It's not feasible. They said that to me specifically. I remember it. So
It has
are we
costs-
sure they're going to be able to do that?
It has cost associated with it,
Okay.
but they put the design together, and it would make much more sense to use that same firm to dissect and manipulate that design than it would to go out for a whole new firm to rebuild that building, only smaller. But if it's any of the other proposals, then the select board will have to decide what they want to do, and whether they want to procure a different architect or go with Doran Whittier. And that's not a discussion that I think we're having tonight. That is going to rest with the select board. So tonight, we're just looking at the options. We're hearing from everyone what concerns they have and what they think should be weighed into this process of drilling down on particular options. And we're looking for you all to tell us which options you would like us to pursue.
And the select board has sole discretion to decide whether these architectural bids go to RFP or not?
The select board will make that decision, but I believe that the decision will take into account all the discussion we hear tonight, all the discussion that is sent to the select board from the public who have reviewed this or weighed in on the procedure, and from everyone that's on this stage. We'll also voice our opinions to the select board, but they are the body that's charged with making the decisions.
Okay, so
They
we're
were
going to
elected
vote,
for that
we'll
purpose.
vote for our best option and then wait to hear back on which one we're going forward with? Is that what I'm hearing?
Hold on one second. I'm just
Sorry.
going to do a stop because of the way it's going.
I'm a little slow. I just need
No.
I need to understand what my next step
I
is.
don't- What I want to say is that why don't you finish fully what your questions or comments are,
Yeah.
and then we'll move, because the back and forth is harder to follow.
Oh,
So is
okay.
that, have you fully stated your questions or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to know the process. And
Okay.
so I didn't quite get it, so I'm just asking for clarification.
Okay.
So we're still in the process of narrowing it down.
Yes.
And there may be another public meeting before
Okay.
that the final solution is decided to go forward with. There will
Okay.
certainly be further public input, and then even after that final design is, or the final option is chosen, the select board decide how they want to go about pursuing that design. I believe there's commitment on the select board to have this be a participatory process, so you will all be invited to be engaged in the design as it moves forward.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Real quick, I just want to touch on the feasibility of using the existing footprint or the existing design.
Yeah.
So the easy part is playing arts and crafts and sitting down and cutting up a floor plan and moving things around and taping it back on the piece of paper.
Yeah.
The harder part, or some of the costs associated with that and the redesign of that building, is more tied to things like the electrical system, the HVAC system, things like that. That is kind of the behind-the-scenes stuff that you can't really do until you have that floor plan set up, so that it might not have to
I used
be-
to just you don't have to, I'm a civil structural. I
Okay.
worked with architects.
Yeah.
I know they're
Yeah, so
difficult,
for
so-
everybody else, it's
Yeah, it's fine.
it's the stuff that you can't see on a floor plan. It's the stuff above the ceiling and behind the walls that needs to be reworked.
Thank you.
We're going to come over here, and I know I can see that there are still people standing. And so I noticed in the last couple questions, we ended up in a bit of like a back and forth as people clarified and moved on. So we're going to return to our original structure of this and just say, whatever your questions or comments are, please give them fully, and then we're going to let our panelists respond if it's something that requires a response. Go ahead.
Hi, Nancy James, 158, excuse me, 158 Oak Street. So just first question, it's more of a comment actually, and I want to thank Molly for mentioning the significant capital needs that we have in the town, specifically relative to schools. So we have a lot in front of us, so I really do appreciate that. We need to look at this holistically. I know I said this at town meeting, and I'm saying it again. One thing, though, that is a little troubling, and I think that we as a town need to figure this out collectively, is there's a lot of comparisons in terms of the proposed, and I know that we're not talking about the older, the design that we just voted on, but that it's 2.5 times the size, right, of the current building. But what I don't hear from a lot of people is the current building is significantly undersized. So I read something in Westwood Minute the other day that there was a study in October of 2023 that said that the current space was sufficient for our needs. And I read the study today, and that's not at all what it said, and I'll actually read it. It says, but remains undersized, outdated, and in a state of disrepair. So which is it, right? So we kind of need to figure that out. It's not going to help us move forward if there's all of this, I mean, I'll call it misinformation for what it is, right? So we need to come together and figure it out. I think that it's not about needs and wants. I think it's been outlined what is needed. It's not, I'll repeat myself again from the town meeting, no one dreamed up something that's excessive, right? So it's ultimately about needs, so I appreciate the time that the working group put into it, but we've got to come up with a better way to approach it. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. All right.
Hi, my name's Bill Salim on 24 Greenacre Road, and interesting conversation we've had so far today. I just wanted to think outside the box. So there's this thing right now that's called the Fair Share Amendment. It's the millionaire's tax, and right now what that funds is the T and teachers. I think both police departments and fire departments, they have a need outside the community, and they're used by our departments are used by other municipalities when they have calls, and you've mentioned that today. And I think one way to get some money out of this is to talk to our senators, which I've talked to Senator Roush, and it should be raised that, and he was kind of listening to me for 5 minutes. I said, hey, why don't we try to get some funding from the state and amend the way that works so that fire departments and police stations are eligible to get some of this money, and it takes some of the burden off of what we're all talking about here. So it wouldn't only satisfy our needs over here, it would satisfy needs of so many communities who are in the same spot that we are. And I know Fall River was brought up. They got some funding. I specifically talked to the senator. He was aware of that. He thought this was a good idea. I know that fund has a lot of money. We can potentially tap that and get maybe started down the road of doing something like that, and then maybe retroactively get some money out of this deal. So we are putting something forward to not only our community by building a better fire station that serves our needs, but for other communities who need us at the same time. So I just wanted to raise that as a point that the selectmen can take with the State House and say, hey, there's a big need here. There was a big need 5 years ago with the T and in Massachusetts teachers, and hey, there's a big need here too, so why can't we get some well-deserved funding out of that? So that's one of my main points that I wanted to raise. The other is that, I'll be just a minute. The committee up there is 6 people who are trying really hard, I get that. I'm just wondering on a smaller note, why isn't there just a person from the town on that, like just a regular voter who's interested in getting some action on this? And why can't that just be amended? The select committee here right now, they could agree to having someone who's not the fire chief or the building inspector or someone who has an interest in the town, who's sincerely trying to do the best for them. And that would take some of this animosity that's going back and forth in this conversation kind of out of the picture. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Stacy Monahan, 27 Allen Road. I just had a question about the immediate health and safety needs of the firefighters. Back to square one, this is going to take several years to address a permanent solution to FS1, and I toured the fire station. It is deplorable. We know about disease and carcinogens and no decontamination zone. I don't feel right having that stand until we have a solution for FS1. So I want to know what the thinking was around that for a temporary fix so that we have safety and health for our firefighters. And then the other thing I just wanted to throw out there, I know the school's doing a similar forum in 10 days. It feels very hard, I think, from what I've listened to tonight, to separate the two issues with all of our responsibilities for schools and the responsibility of the firefighters. So I just was curious what the decision was to separate the discussion for tonight.
So I just wanted to respond that all of the options, I believe, had a note that the current needs of the existing station will have to be addressed, and that will be included within that option. So, for instance, if the option is, I don't know, just to pick one, the Deerfield alternative, the firefighters are where they are. Until then, there have to be some temporary provisions made. So whether that is the full temporary ops facility that was a part of the original proposal or something else, that will be discussed as part of the option. So that will fall into all the options. But I think it's been acknowledged that there are current needs that have to be addressed with the fire station during the design and build.
So is there a cost associated with that that can be shared?
Is there a cost? Yes. What the cost will be? No. As we, put 8 options in front of you for a long-term solution for FS1, we're having similar conversations about what is a short term. Is it trailers in the back? Is it a sprung structure in the front? Is it leaving the building and going forward with the temporary option? So we agree that something needs to be done. This is a dire need. We're working that as a parallel. And speaking of parallels, it was never our intention to splitting between us and the schools. I think I made that clear at the beginning. We are one community with multiple needs. We scheduled this forum before knowing about the school forums. I will be there as well. I know Tim is here. We're really supportive of each other. It's an interesting concept, right? If we're going back to people only have so many hours in a day, how do we get there? I think that's a very interesting point to consider.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah. Ada John Patrick Drive. Thank you for hosting this forum. To my fellow resident, I know the select board and town official may not always listen, but I believe the people of Westwood will, when we make a strong point and keep fighting for what is right, our neighbor will stand with us. I cannot support claims that Westwood need a larger fire headquarters than Lexington. Lexington has double our population. Their fire headquarters is under 26,000 square feet, and their second station is old and small. In contrast, our Islington fire station is new, almost 12,000 square feet with 3 bays, but only 1 engine is actively used. I also cannot trust architect Doyle Whittier or OPM Vertex. These 2 companies have been involved in almost all major town projects, including the police station, the Pie Hill School, and have failed the fire station 1 twice. Vertex and their employee Chinling ignore residents' input and fail to provide a cost-saving alternative as required by their contract. Furthermore, I cannot trust any plan proposed by a group with no resident representation. I guess today's 8 proposal is proposed by a group without resident representation. And finally, we must prioritize fiscal responsibility. The solution for Fire Station 1 should be funded within existing tax limit to avoid further burdening residents with tax increase. And I have a simple question. Why, Fire Chief, you cannot have female firefighter work in Islington Station? There has so many space there. Why she has to work in Fire Station 1 and have to stop pumping for her kids, baby? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to address 2 things there. We can move her, and if this happens again, we will move her. I was made aware of it afterwards, and I was embarrassed, and It should have happened. That's on me. As far as Lexington goes, they built a main station that was too small because they're currently rebuilding their Station 2 and adding another bay, and they have plans in 5 years to build a third station. So that's why their main station. I go to Lexington once a month, and I've spoken with the chief. So that's why they did that the way they did it.
And I'm sure the chiefs could elaborate on this better than me, but only because it came up on something earlier. I know about it, is we could have a female firefighter stationed at Station 2 as their primary, but firefighters work overtime all the time, and that would be precluding that individual from working any overtime at FS1, which would be discriminatory and would not be, in my eyes, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, could I maybe?
Sorry,
I
Steph,
apologize, sorry,
Go
Sarah.
ahead.
I think there was a question on doing it without tax increases. Did I hear that correctly? It just in case it helps at all. I know I addressed it a little bit at the beginning, but it would just be very difficult to fit in the debt service for a project of this scale, which would probably be $1 million, $2 million of dollars within that current, what we call non-exempt debt budget, which would be the only way to do it without increasing taxes. It's always something we look at. I just want to put out there the capacity aspect of that would mean taking from other areas of the operating budget.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, okay, go ahead.
Hi, David Atkins, 783 High Street. So I moved to Westwood in 2005, so 20 years here now. And I'll be really quick. So option 2, does option 2, I just want to make clear, does option 2 meet the programmatic needs of the department? Or I can ask the others, which is it less expensive?
We'd have to kind of.
And if so, that's all I need to know.
No, we've recognized that we're going to have to cut some.
So it's not, does it meet, how much better does it meet the needs than the existing facility, which I assume is like 10% of the needs or something?
Hold on one second, Chief. David, is that the end of your comment in question? Just so we...
Yes, I think, well, no, my comment is that I feel like we need a new fire station. We need to figure out how to get it done. And the first election sent a strong message that it was too big and too expensive. So I expected that there would be a reduction, that there'd be a negotiation essentially with voters. Unfortunately, there was a second election without changing anything. And I feel like now we're in a crisis and we're talking about lots of great ideas about things to do with like a town center, but I think it's a big mistake to conflate all of that stuff into the core issue, which is we need to figure out how to get it done. And I've been involved with a lot of projects over the years. I think everyone has worked hard on this. I don't think anyone's trying to rip off the residents or anything like that. They met the original requirements from January when it was said this was going to be a $40 million project and a 36,000 square foot thing. But things changed in the last 15, 18 months, and the process didn't adapt. So now, lower the size, lower the cost, and let's get it built.
All right. Okay. Right here.
Thank you. I'm John Valdez from 130 Strasser. Thanks for everybody who stuck around this long. I'm going to extend upon that in some earlier comments, just with maybe a little counsel regarding transparency and what I think people may be looking for from it. One comment was just made that while we appreciate your listening, I think some things still feel opaque, and it may not be for this session, but it would be good to know that sad reassessment of the hard decisions of what is truly essential for the building versus what is really something they want to have versus what is nice to have. Because we're at the point of making very difficult decisions, obviously, and we want to support everything we can. But as lay people not involved in the fire service, I think we all need help knowing what absolutely is essential and what is close to essential, because I certainly can't make that on my own. So that would come forward, again, commentary. And the next one, again, in terms of transparency, based on an earlier comment on this side that I think may have been misconstrued when it comes about long-term financial planning, when I talked to other voters who had voted against the proposal, one thing they had said was that they were concerned that there's a lot of uncertainty in finances right now all around. And they were concerned that this one exemption may be the first of many. They didn't know how many exemptions were coming in the future and how much of their money would have to be allocated toward the future. And some people said, I have to draw a line because I don't know where it's coming. So the more transparency you're able to provide about what those upcoming projects, what they might be, the more we may be able to make those educated decisions on and be able to support what you want to do. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, right here.
Hi, Heather Morrison, Magnolia Drive. I just wanted to sort of echo and add a little bit to what has been said already. I think engagement of the community, as you've said, is key. I like the idea of the QR codes and getting some feedback after this session. I would encourage you to maybe look more at not the specific plans, but maybe the parts of the plans that people are most interested in. I've heard people say things like, we want something that can be done fast, or we think having it on a different plot of land is important. Like, what are those characteristics? That might be more helpful to inform as these choices are whittled down. I think related to transparency and long-range planning, I think that's huge. I think people are going to have a really hard time agreeing to almost anything until they have a good understanding of what the 10, 15-year plan looks like and how this intersects with the school plan that we're talking about in parallel. And so I think knowing who is on that planning committee would be really helpful. I personally haven't looked, so maybe it's right there. But I think knowing who's on so that we know who we can reach out to as our representatives to talk to them about what those focuses should be. And I would just like to echo that I'm hearing that the decontamination for the firefighters is really critical. And so what can we do almost independent of this whole process in the meantime? Because regardless of what happens, this is not going to be solved soon. And so what can be done to prioritize that in particular? Because that's what I'm hearing is the biggest safety concern right now.
Thank you. I was remiss to not mention this earlier, but for that long-range committee, we discussed, and this sort of goes with what Molly was saying, that we work in collaboration with the school. On that is the school superintendent, the school committee chair, the select board chair, myself, a number of other department heads in town, and then a number of residents. I think, is it 11 people? I'm sorry, I'm looking at you. I think it's about 11 or a 12-person committee. So there's a number of people, but it's the big ones, I guess, town administrator, school superintendent. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then the chair of the school committee and the chair of the select board, if that's helpful at all. And then was there?
Thank you. All right, we're going to come over here.
Hi,
I see we're down to our last few people.
Carolyn Rogers Visna, 31 Sterling Road. In the spirit of public safety, I wanted to ask about the notification that Westwood residents received about what sounds like unusually high levels of the PFAS forever chemicals on the fire station property. What are the implications of these high levels on surrounding neighbors? If this property is used for a new fire station, what are the implications for the firefighters, especially the women of childbearing age who have been referenced multiple times? And then if the same property is not used, will it affect the town's ability to repurpose or sell the property?
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So when back in March or April, we were still doing site work on this, initial testing found the presence of PFAS, the forever chemical that's being found really anywhere that you're going looking for it. So it was found, it was reported to the state as required by state law. We did some additional digging back in July to try to measure the scope of how far back it's going. That testing showed it that it was still at levels, and so we're doing additional testing. Actually, I think they're wrapping up this week. So the testing is ongoing. I can't speak to what the impact is going to be in general or even financially at this point because I don't know key things like how far back it goes and how far deep it goes. What I've been reassured by the engineers we have working on this is that it's in the groundwater, which is at considerable depths in that area, and that there are no irrigation or drinking wells in that area. So there's not an immediate public safety risk. What needs to be done with that site is something. I don't know what the implications are. I don't know what the costs are. I don't know what the something is. There's situations where, okay, it's there, we're going to cap it. And then there's situations where it's there and we need to dig it all up and transport it to Kansas and put it in a big hole there. When we get the report from the testing, we'll have a better idea. But regardless of if this station is built here or if it's built somewhere else, that will have to be addressed.
Thank you. All right, our last couple folks are right over here, so I'm going to just stick on this side now. Go ahead.
Good evening, I'm John Cummings, 4 Chickadee Lane, and I'm a volunteer on the Permanent Building Commission. And I just want to assure everybody that whether you're here or not, all the boards and commissions are citizens of Westwood. I kind of take offense when people say, wow, we don't have any citizens on board. Hello, it's all citizens of Westwood. I feel I have to defend Dora and Whittier a little bit. I was the chair for the new school, the Pine Hill School. They were phenomenal to deal with. I can tell you that their architectural design was reviewed by the OPM, started out as Compass, became Vertex. They were instrumental in many of the refunds and grants that we got back that we may have missed. The fire station is by far and away the worst building in town. It's the only building where people can get sick, right? And they are. The reason why it's so undersized is because there is no decontamination behind it. The machines are bigger, they have to fit in. My concern is that when we redo this, the first question that was asked and the whole basis that Dora and Whittier did, they asked the fire chief, what do you need? What does the town ask you to service so that we know what your needs are? That's the basis of the fire station that we didn't vote on. I want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in the next version. Is that 10 or am I halfway?
That's 30 seconds left. I missed your
great.
1 minute mark, though. Sorry.
30 seconds, where can I go? So someone asked about money. There was a 2% back in 2005 that would have been paid upon by people that came into town on top of the purchase of the price. That got voted down at town meeting. It did not go forward. However, if that had gone into a capital fund, like requested or by the petitioner, that would have paid for all of these projects. And we would still be at that same tax rate. I think that's what she referenced by the finance, the 5-year, whatever Rob was talking about, that they talked about up there. All right, I'm done, red light.
Thank you very much. Mr. Folsom.
Good evening, I'm Bob Folsom, 35 Smith Drive. Also, probably more why I'm here, it's 649 High Street, which is on butter to our wonderful fire station, which they are great neighbors, just let me start off with that. If you do stay with one of the plans that keeps the fire station next to us, Plan 2, I noticed that, to me as an abutter, probably seems best. We have 4 bays in the front of the current fire station. We have 3 bays in the back, one of which is inoperable. Am I correct with that, I assume? Yeah. So that's 6 total bays. The new station that we were looking at was going to be 5 bays. It sounds like the fire department is not totally adverse to access front and back, at least if it was all on one level. But if you kept a couple of bays in back, kept the bays in front, the 4, either way, you'd go up a flight of a story, rather, and that would provide not all the space you want, but some of it. I don't mean this as disrespectful, so please don't take it that way, just ideas in my head. If you have 4 bays in front, if you pull the engines out, that gives you a meeting space of quite a large area, especially for big meetings that only happen once in a while. Again, thinking inside the box. And the other thing is the mechanics bay. I know you really want that on site, but from an outsider's standpoint, looking at that, if that is in another site, and you're going to be building a temporary station, or you were anyway, when that was built, if you kept in mind that one of those bays would be more permanent, you're going to have the utilities there, you're going to have heat, air conditioning, water, electricity, sewer. 30 seconds, excellent. So a lot of the costs of moving or building a mechanic space somewhere else are all going to be covered. Possibly that could be built with the look forward of making a more permanent structure as a second step. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, and I do enjoy being next to the fire station. I've been next to them 66 of my 70 years. That's when my funeral home moved into Westwood, so they've been good neighbors the whole time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So as far as having the bays down back, as was mentioned, the previous building was 69 feet. And that was with those bays down back only fitting an ambulance. None of the fire apparatus would fit in there. So in order to do that, we'd have to ramp up in the front and raise the total height of the building. We didn't think that was going to be received well at all. What was the second part? The mechanics bay, we do advocate for that. Our mechanic works for Needham as well. Just had to send a truck over to Cummins, lost it for a month. It's more about having the trucks available to us than anything else. It's a job that he could have done in 2 days, but he had time constraints and he had some issues going on in Needham, and they said just send it out. So that's just an example of what will happen. The other thing is the rates go up 5% twice a year at all these places. You're looking at $200+ an hour for an oil change or a tire change or any of that. If we do move it to the Legion, that was going to be a temporary structure which could only be there for 3 years. Now you're talking permitting and everything else and a whole new building. Those utilities that were going in were temporary. It would completely change it, and I don't know what the cost of that would be. So, was that all of them? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. I see that everyone who had a first time at the microphone has had a chance to go. I see someone standing for their second time at the microphone. And then after we hear from that person, I see no one else standing. We'll move into final words before people exit about what you can do when you head out from here and next steps.
Tara Themistocles, 294 Clapboard Tree Street. I just have one question. The QR code, you're saying that people can go online and make a choice on what version they want to pick?
Well, I'll let someone here clarify, but it's a little bit different than that.
Okay.
There was a snafu with the technology. If you go outside, there's an exit survey with a QR code where you can definitely select, or if you don't want to scan the QR code, you can put a sticker on whatever plan that you want, or you can email the select board and say, I came to this event, or I watched the event, and this is the option that I would like to proceed.
And what about for the rest of the people in the town that can't come to this meeting and weren't able to watch it online? How are they all going to access it?
I will have that online by tomorrow.
Sorry, one other question. Would the town consider on doing a public survey where you sent an email, because you have everyone's email, out to everyone, asking them, so you have the trust, you can build the trust back up, where people can actually answer multiple questions and tell you what they want? I know it's a little time consuming, but I think that there's a mistrust in what's the process, and I think you would build that back. Just a suggestion.
I like the suggestion. I wish I had everybody's email. I have a lot of them, but I don't have all, but I like the creative
yeah, the ones
thinking.
that you do.
Yeah.
There's a ton of them. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Seeing that we have no one else standing for questions, we're going to move into next steps from here. Thank you all, again, for being here. We're just coming up on the 3-hour mark, so we had 1 hour of presentation and discussion, and then 2 hours of conversation and brainstorming with everyone here. We appreciate the time that meant for people. And so let me tell you what's happening in the lobby as you exit. We're going to talk about that, and then Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings, one of our select board members, is going to close us out officially. So in the lobby, as you exit in a few minutes, there will be 9 poster boards up against the windows leading to outside. 1 for each option we've discussed here tonight, 8 There's 8. You'll see the pictures just like the slides. There's an additional poster board for new options that were brought forward tonight. So that's a blank poster board that says other, right? Other options. And so things like the Sheehan property idea or the flipping the building at the police station site idea. That's where you would put something if that was a preference of yours. What you're going to do, there are stickers available to place on your 2 most preferred options at this point. So this is not like we're not making a final decision. We're just getting a sense of the top 2 most preferred options at this point that people have. This is going to help us begin to define our path forward, as has been discussed throughout the evening. As we just mentioned, there's also a QR code out there that will take you to an exit survey. I hope everyone is able to complete it. There's also the ability to email the select board directly afterwards, and we will be here up front and down front for anybody who wants to talk to any of us individually or in small groups. So again, thank you all, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings from the select board.
Thank you, Danielle, for doing such a great job tonight as our moderator. Didn't she do a great job? It's not easy, and she did it very well. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you who came out tonight, who stayed for such a long period of time, and thank you to everyone who is making the time to watch the recording of this event. I also want to thank Congressman Lynch. I believe he was here, but because this meeting went long, I think he was unable to stay. But we appreciate him stopping by and hearing this conversation. Democracy is a participation sport, and our discussion tonight has been democracy in action. Listening to one another, constructive dialogue towards solving for this public safety solution. The late Justice Brandeis once said that the most important political office is that of private citizen, emphasizing that a healthy and successful democracy requires well-informed and engaged citizens. That is what tonight has been about. We know that not everyone can be here in person, and for those of you watching this recording at a later time, your voices are just as important as those we heard in this room tonight. So as you have heard, please send your feedback to the Select Board by email. You can do that at bos@townhall.westwood.ma.us. As you heard, our next Select Board meeting is on October 20th, so please do try to get your comments in by then, as we are going to go to the next rung of this discussion, which will be a participatory process as we work through this. Together, we will move forward in meeting this challenge. I want to thank all of our subject matter experts for their presentation tonight. We hope that you all will all stay engaged in this process as we move forward. And with that, I will move that the Select Board meeting be adjourned. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.